that Tsundere goddess falls in love with me. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226, Death of Kitahara Sasuke. Everyone turned their heads. They didn't expect that someone would dare to say such words at Kitahara Sasuke's birthday party. How dare you? Who dares to speak rudely to Mr. Kitahara here? The square-faced man shouted. Lu Chuan walked out of the crowd. When Kishimoto, Hiruko and Zonglinger saw Lu Chuan appear, their panic disappeared immediately and their emotions stabilized at once. For some reason, they always felt that as long as Lu Chuan was here, nothing would happen. This was the first time that Zonglinger experienced this feeling. When Kitahara Sasuke said that he wanted to marry her as a concubine, the first person she thought of in her mind was Lu Chuan. She desperately wanted Lu Chuan to come out to protect her, but she couldn't see Lu Chuan anywhere, and she was so anxious that she almost cried. At this time, Lu Chuan suddenly appeared, and her heart fell instantly with an indescribable joy. Is this a sense of security? Such a thought popped up in Zonlinger's mind. Everyone looked at Lu Chuan. The square-faced man stared at Lu Chuan and asked, "Who are you? What do you want to do here?" Lu Chuan smiled and said, "I'm from China. My name is Lu Chuan, and the purpose of my coming here today is to challenge this so-called number one in the island country and see if he is qualified to sit in this position." Everyone was shocked. Kitahara Sasuke has been the number one martial artist in the island country for many years. Except for the island country immortal Kamida Ichiro, who has disappeared, no one has ever dared to challenge Kitahara Sasuke. This guy must be crazy. He actually wants to challenge Kitahara Sasuke. What's the difference between this and courting death? You ignorant Chinese boy. Even if you Chinese have more powerful warriors, Kitahara Sasuke is definitely not someone you, an unknown person, are qualified to challenge. This is the best joke I've heard recently. Someone actually wants to challenge Kitahara Sasuke. This is either a fool or a fool. The square-faced man sneered and said, "You still want to challenge Mr. Kitahara? I don't think you can even pass this level of mine." As soon as the voice fell, the aura of the 9th level of the transformation realm on his body burst out, and he was about to attack Lu Chuan. At this time, Kitahara Sasuke stopped the square-faced man and said with a smile, "You don't have to worry about this matter. Since he wants to challenge me, then I'll give him a chance. It just so happens that I haven't made a move for a long time. If I don't stretch my muscles, I'm afraid everyone will think that I'm old and not qualified to sit in my current position." When the people around heard that Kitahara Sasuke was going to make a move, they suddenly became excited. You have to know that the last time Kitahara Sasuke made a move was a few years ago. Now they are lucky enough to see the island country's number one martial artist in action with their own eyes. It is simply a capital that they can brag to others for the rest of their lives. When the square-faced man saw Kitahara Sasuke was about to make a move, he nodded seriously and said, "Mr. Kitahara, please make sure to teach this ignorant Chinese a lesson." Kitahara Sasuke waved his hand. "You just stand aside and watch the fun." The people in the yard immediately retreated to the surroundings, leaving space for Kitahara Sasuke and Lu Chuan to fight. Naoki Kishimoto looked at Lu Chuan with a worried look on his face, walked up to him and said, "Lu Chuan, you must not risk your life because of a momentary impulse. Kitahara Sasuke is an invincible existence in the island country. You can't be his opponent." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "We will know after the fight." He turned his head to look at Zonglinger and Hiruko Kishimoto and whispered, "You will find a chance to slip out later. It's best to find a car and wait for me at the door. You don't have to worry about the result of the fight between me and Kitahara Sasuke. You must go out in advance. Do you hear me?" Zonglinger and Hiruko Kishimoto looked at each other. Although they didn't know what Lu Chuan meant, they all nodded seriously. The three of them were people who had been through hardships together, so they still had this tacit understanding. Soon, only Lu Chuan and Kitahara Sasuke were left in the center of the yard. Kitahara Sasuke took out a wooden sword and said with a smile, "You are young, I will not bully you. Today I will use this wooden sword to fight you. You can ask for any weapon you want." Lu Chuan smiled and said, then I will also use a sword, but I advise you to use a real sword. The wooden sword can't stop my attack. Then he walked to the side and picked up a sword from the weapon rack over there. Kitahara Sasuke was full of confidence and had no intention of changing his sword. In his opinion, Lu Chuan was just a bragging young man. Today I will teach this ignorant boy from China a lesson with a wooden sword. In the future, it will definitely be passed down as a good story in the martial arts world. Kitahara Sasuke thought happily. He took a fighting posture and said to Lu Chuan, let's start. Lu Chuan did not hesitate and rushed towards Kitahara Sasuke with the sword. Kitahara Sasuke was still thinking about what kind of posture he should use to defeat Lu Chuan to appear to be a master when the momentum displayed by Lu Chuan made his face change. He quickly picked up the wooden sword in his hand to resist Lu Chuan's attack. With a click, after just a face-to-face, the wooden sword in Kitahara Sasuke's hand broke into two sections. The atmosphere in the yard froze in an instant. The expressions of those who still wanted to see Kitahara Sasuke show his power were directly frozen. After a while, someone coughed twice and said, Mr. Kitahara is giving in to the young man, and he is holding a wooden sword, so it is reasonable for him to be cut off by a real sword. Kitahara Sasuke himself did not expect that Lu Chuan would cut off the sword in his hand so easily. For him, a master of kendo, it is simply a great shame. Lu Chuan smiled and looked at Kitahara Sasuke and said, I told you to take a real sword, but you didn't listen. Kitahara Sasuke looked at Lu Chuan with anger on his face, and then sucked the weapon rack through the air, and a sword flew into his hand. Boy, I underestimated you. You succeeded in angering me. Don't blame me for bullying you in the next battle. After saying that, he rushed towards Lu Chuan with a sword, and a sword aura appeared faintly around him. Mr. Kitahara is going to get serious. This is the style he should have. Someone exclaimed. Lu Chuan did not dare to neglect it. He raised the sword in his hand and fought with Kitahara Sasuke. He did not know much about kendo. This was the first time he fought with a sword. But as the saying goes, all methods are universal. In martial arts, as long as you study one thoroughly, you can apply it to other methods and learn how to use various weapons. The difference is that some are easy to use and some are not. What's more, Lu Chuan is still learning the way of cultivation. There are tens of thousands of kendo books in his inherited memory. Any one of them is better than the kendo studied by contemporary martial arts. He has just glanced at one of them and has a general understanding of kendo. The two men fought, swords flashed, and everyone around them shrank their necks, fearing that they would be affected by a sudden sword energy. Many people even hid, not daring to watch directly. Lu Chuan did not fall into the disadvantage when facing Kitahara Sasuke and fought back and forth with him. At that time, those who thought that Kitahara Sasuke would definitely beat Lu Chuan with a real sword fell silent. Zhonglinger and Kishimoto Hiruko were relieved to see that Lu Chuan did not suffer a loss at the hands of Kitahara Sasuke. Then they took a look at the situation around them, and without hesitation, they dragged Kishimoto Naoki and walked out. Now everyone's attention is on the battle between Lu Chuan and Kitahara Sasuke, so no one noticed that the three of them slipped away quietly. Lu Chuan still had some difficulty dealing with Kitahara Sasuke at the beginning. After all, the other party was a kendo master who had been famous for many years, not just to show off. But as the battle progressed, Lu Chuan observed Kitahara Sasuke's moves and combined with the sword manual of the cultivation world, he also had some insights into the use of swords, and his sword moves became more and more coherent. When Kitahara Sasuke first fought with Lu Chuan, he felt that the other party was a rookie in kendo, and he wanted to defeat the other party as soon as possible, so as to justify his reputation as the first person in martial arts in the island country. But as the battle progressed, he found that Lu Chuan's moves became more and more sophisticated, and he had reached the level of master in the end, and even had a tendency to surpass himself. This made him extremely horrified. He suspected that Lu Chuan had been pretending from the beginning. This kid was originally a kendo master, and he was deliberately showing weakness at the beginning. Anyway, he didn't believe that anyone could go from a kendo rookie to a kendo master in a battle. It was precisely because of this change that he became more and more eager to defeat Lu Chuan as soon as possible and took out all the tricks at the bottom of the box. Seeing Kitahara Sasuke getting anxious, Lu Chuan showed a playful smile on his face and began to exert all his strength, not intending to waste any more time. Being able to gain some insights in the way of the sword today was already a win for him. The long swords in the hands of the two danced and flew up. Suddenly, Kitahara Sasuke revealed a flaw because he was too eager. Lu Chuan seized the opportunity and stabbed Kitahara Sasuke's chest with a sword. The long sword came out from Kitahara Sasuke's back. Lu Chuan released his spiritual power and sealed Kitahara Sasuke's internal energy along the long sword. He said coldly, "It seems that you are not qualified to sit in this position." After that, he walked over, grabbed Kitahara Aoi's collar, and ran towards the house with him at a high speed. Everyone was in shock at Kitahara Sasuke's defeat and couldn't recover for a long time. Kitahara Sasuke actually lost. What did that kid take Kitahara Sasuke inside for? Lu Chuan brought Kitahara Sasuke to the secluded yard and opened the door. Kitahara Sasuke was horrified and shouted, "How do you know this place?" Lu Chuan smiled and said, "The dragon veins and the Zuanhuangqi here are all treasures of my China. You are a thief, and don't let anyone know." Kitahara Sasuke's face turned pale. He wanted to activate his internal strength, but found that there was no response at all. He trembled and said, "You want to take these things away, right? They are sealed by the formation. Only I know how to take them out. If you listen to me, I will tell you how to unlock the seal." Lu Chuan laughed and said, "Are you trying to fool me? To crack this formation, don't you need your essence and blood? Otherwise, why did I bring you here?" Kitahara Sasuke's face changed wildly, and he immediately wanted to break free from Lu Chuan and escape from this terrible boy. Unfortunately, he was just a fish on the chopping board without being able to use his internal strength, and could only let Lu Chuan control him. Kitahara Sasuke, your Kitahara family persecutes others for their own prosperity and wealth. Today, I will get rid of you, the scourge, and it can be regarded as a good deed. After saying that, Lu Chuan grabbed the sword that was inserted into Kitahara Sasuke, pulled it out, and instantly cut his throat. Blood gushed out and sprinkled on the formation in the room. The barrier dissipated instantly. Lu Chuan took out the jade bottle he had prepared in advance, twisted the spell, and shouted softly, "Collect." Then the wisp of Zuanhuangqi entered the jade bottle. After putting away the jade bottle, Lu Chuan reached out and took the 3 dragon veins into his body. Since he had already absorbed 1 dragon vein before, these 3 dragon veins entered Lu Chuan's body without any resistance. Then he walked to the corner in the north and picked up the ancient jade. Although he didn't know what the ancient jade was, it could be used as the foundation of the formation together with the dragon vein, so it must be extraordinary. Based on the principle of not letting it go for nothing, Lu Chuan naturally couldn't miss it. After doing all this, Lu Chuan picked up Kitahara Sasuke's body, jumped onto the roof, and returned to the previous yard along the wall. He stood on the high wall, threw Kitahara Sasuke's body down, and shouted, "Kitahara Sasuke is dead, the #1 martial artist in the island country, but this." After that, he turned around quickly and left. In front of the house, an off-road vehicle was already waiting. Lu Chuan jumped down from the wall and got into the car directly and found that the person driving was actually Zhang. He did not hesitate and immediately ordered, "Go." Chapter 227, Stinky Girl. Zhang stepped on the accelerator and the SUV flew out directly. Daruko Kishimoto looked at Lu Chuan with concern and asked, "How was the fight? Did you win or lose?" Lu Chuan smiled slightly and said, "Kitahara Sasuke is dead." Daruko Kishimoto's eyes widened instantly, and she said in disbelief, "Dead, dead." Naoki Kishimoto on the side also took a breath of cold air and said quickly, "Lu Chuan, you can't say that nonsense. Kitahara Sasuke is the #1 martial artist in the island country. He is a legend in the minds of countless islanders. How could he die just like that? You must be kidding us, right?" Lu Chuan said lightly, "I cut his throat with my own hands." Naoki Kishimoto's expression froze, and he opened his mouth to say something, but he didn't say a word for a long time. He knew Lu Chuan was not kidding. Kitahara Sasuke was probably really dead. Daruko Kishimoto's face was also full of shock. You know, Kitahara Sasuke was already a household name when she was a child. Now, when she heard that he died at the hands of Lu Chuan, a young man who was about the same age as her, she felt unreal. Only Zhang Linga smiled, glanced at Lu Chuan through the rearview mirror, and said in praise, "Well done, you are worthy of being my bodyguard." In the Kitahara house, everyone has not come back to their senses. Just now, Lu Chuan said that Kitahara Sasuke was dead, and most people thought he was bragging. After all, Kitahara Sasuke is a godlike existence in their minds. How could a god die? But the next second, they saw the body thrown down by Lu Chuan, and they were stunned. Kitahara Sasuke's body was lying on its back, his body was lying on its back, but his head was facing up. The cut on his neck was shocking, and blood was constantly oozing out. His eyes were wide open, and his eyes were full of despair, unwillingness, fear, unbelievable, and powerless. His expression was ferocious, and he no longer had the composure he had in his high position. This man, who was regarded as a god by the Japanese, died in such a miserable way that the people who came to the birthday party did not react for a long time. After a while, many women came to their senses and could not help screaming. Many people woke up suddenly. Master Kitahara is dead. The #1 martial artist in my island country actually died at the hands of a Chinese boy. This is not true. This is not true. Mr. Kitahara is an invincible existence. How could he die? This is all fake. At that time, the square-faced man also looked at the body on the ground in disbelief, walked over and squatted, stretched out his hand tremblingly, and after confirming that this was the body of Sasuke Kitahara, a trace of grief appeared on his face. No. He quickly stood up, turned his head, and looked at the other 4 9th level masters of the transformation realm on the scene, and shouted, "That kid killed Mr. Bilan, which is a great shame for us. We must catch him and avenge Mr. Bilan." After saying that, he rushed out quickly. The 4 9th level masters of the transformation realm did not dare to hesitate and hurriedly followed. The 5 people were aggressive and had a posture of wanting to eat Lu Chuan alive. However, when they rushed out of the house, Lu Chuan's figure had already disappeared, and not even a hair could be seen. This guy must know that we will not let him go, and he will definitely hide later. What should we do now? One person asked. The square-faced man gritted his teeth and said, "Use all relationships to monitor all channels, to leave the island country, to prevent this kid from escaping. As long as this guy is still in the island country, we will always be able to find him." The other 4 nodded. The square-faced man glanced at the 4 people and suddenly asked, when Mr. Kameda was in seclusion, he said that he would break through the bottleneck within 3 years and reach the level of Shinin. Now it has been 3 years since he was in seclusion. Is there any movement from the Kameda family? The so-called Shinin is the mysterious realm in the Chinese martial arts realm. One person said, the Kameda family has been relatively low-key in recent years. I haven't heard of any news, but I heard that Mr. Kitahara went to the Kameda family not long ago and brought gifts. Maybe Mr. Kameda has successfully broken through to become a Shinin. The square-faced man narrowed his eyes, thought for a while, and said, "Take Mr. Kitahara's body and go to the Kameda family." Lu Chuan asked Zhang Linga to drive the car to a house in a secluded countryside. This is the address given to him by Suzumiya Yukina. This is a safe house of the Suzumiya family. They are hiding here and there will be no danger in the short term. Lu Chuan and others got out of the car, and soon, a figure opened the door and walked out. It was Suzumiya Yukina. She came here after being sent out of the Kitahara family's house by Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan-kun, who are they? Suzumiya Yukina asked gently. Lu Chuan smiled and said, "This is Mr. Naoki Kishimoto, and this is his daughter Miss Iruko. As for this one, she is a stinky girl. Remember to stay away from her, otherwise she may plot against you." After that, he looked at Naoki Kishimoto and the other 2 and said, "This is Miss Suzumiya Yukina. She is from the Suzumiya family. She was also captured by Kitahara Sasuke to be a concubine. I rescued her. Ah, it hurts." Zhang Linga pinched Lu Chuan's arm angrily, biting her back teeth and said, "Who are you saying is a stinky girl?" Lu Chuan quickly said, "It's just a joke. Be a little slower. You almost pinched my flesh off." Zhang Linga was unhappy. "Who told you to talk nonsense?" Suzumiya Yukina looked at the 2 of them like enemies and couldn't help laughing. In order to ease the conflict between the two, she changed the subject and said, although you have escaped here, Kitahara Sasuke must have made things difficult for you, right? He is a man who will do anything to achieve his goals. I'm afraid we can only live in his shadow in the future. Hearing this, Luchuan smiled slightly and said, Kitahara Sasuke is dead. Chapter 228 Kamida Ichiro. Suzumiya Setsu was stunned for a moment, then as if she thought she had heard it wrong, and said, what? Luchuan repeated it again, saying, Kitahara Sasuke is dead. Suzumiya Setsu was stunned, then her eyes gradually widened, revealing an expression of disbelief. Kitahara Sasuke is dead. How is this possible? Luchuan smiled and said, what's impossible about this? You don't have to worry about him asking you to be his concubine in the future. Suzumiya Setsu took a long time to come back to her senses, then looked at Luchuan gratefully and bowed to him. Mr. Luchuan, thank you. Luchuan waved his hands and said, he deserved to die. Suzumiya Setsu took a deep breath, and her mood was obviously much more relaxed, and then she said, Mr. Kishimoto, Miss Iruko, Miss Chow, please go in quickly, this is a safe house. It would be bad if someone noticed something unusual. Zhonglinga said angrily, my last name is not Chow. I'm not Chow at all. My name is Zhonglinga, don't listen to this bastard. Suzumiya Azuna covered her mouth and laughed secretly, and quickly changed her words. Ms. Linga, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't blame Luchuan-jun. He introduced you like this, but it seems that he is close to you. Luchuan-jun must like you to introduce you in this special way. Zhonglinga widened her eyes. He likes me? Luchuan reached out and knocked on her head. Like you. Then he quickly ran into the house. Zhonglinga stamped her feet in anger. Suzumiya Azuna smiled, said nothing more, and turned to go into the house. Kishimoto Hiruko took Zhonglinga's arm and said with a smile, okay, Luchuan is just joking with you. Let's go in too. Zhonglinga rubbed her head and said angrily, I really don't know what kind of luck this guy has. He can meet such beautiful girls everywhere. Kishimoto Hiruko smiled and asked, what? Are you jealous? Zhonglinga was immediately flustered and said, how? How is it possible? I don't like men. I'm just worried about you beautiful girls. Kishimoto Hiruko smiled and said nothing, and took Zhonglinga into the house. In the living room, several people sat together. Luchuan had just analyzed the current situation with everyone. Although Kitahara Sasuke was dead, other strong men in the island country would never let them go, so they could only hide here during this period. Fortunately, Luchuan has already got the dragon vein. As long as he breaks through, he will not be afraid of the joint efforts of those 9 layer masters of the island country. So next, Luchuan has to break through as soon as possible. I can't be disturbed when I break through, and there will definitely be a lot of noise, so I have to find a secluded place with no one. It's safe here for the time being. You can hide here for a while. After I break through, I will come to find you. Luchuan said. Several people nodded. Zhonglinga said, I want to follow you. Luchuan looked at her and asked, why follow me? Wouldn't it be better for you to stay with them? Zhonglinga thought about it and said seriously, what if you leave us and run away? I have to supervise you. In fact, she was extremely uneasy after experiencing the incident when Kitahara Sasuke said that he wanted her to be a concubine. Only by following Luchuan could she feel at ease. But how could she let Luchuan know about this? So she found an excuse. Luchuan was a little helpless and said, okay, but you have to promise not to cause trouble for me. Zhonglinga nodded quickly. Don't worry, I'm so obedient. How could I cause trouble for you? Luchuan rolled his eyes at her. After the agreement was reached, Luchuan took Zhonglinga out of the safe house to find a suitable place to break through, while Suzumiya Yukina and the other 2 stayed in the safe house, waiting for Luchuan to come back. The Kamida family. In the spacious room, an old man wearing a loose kimono, wooden clogs and grey hair was looking at the body of Kitahara Sasuke on the ground with anger on his face, and murderous intent surged. This man was the famous island country immortal, Kamida Ichiro. He fought with Kitahara Sasuke in the past, and fought a draw. The two of them admired each other, and regarded each other as close friends. Brother Kanji, not long ago you were drinking and talking with me, but in a blink of an eye you have turned into a cold corpse. This fate is really unfair to you. It's unfair. A terrifying aura burst out from him, forcing the 5 9th level masters of the transformation realm, including the square-faced man, to kneel on the ground with horror on their faces. This level of aura is no longer something that the 9th level masters of the transformation realm can possess. The square-faced man quickly asked, "Mr. Kameda, have you successfully broken through to the level of Heavenly Ninja?" Kameda Ichiro snorted coldly, with a hint of heroism on his face. "Yes. The environment of my island country is harsh, and it is difficult to produce Heavenly Ninjas. It has been 100 years since the last Heavenly Ninja was born. It was only after I had many discussions with my brother Kurasuke that I gained some insights and was able to break through. But although I broke through, he passed away. I hate it." The square-faced man's eyes lit up, and he quickly said, "Mr. Kameda, since you are already a Heavenly Ninja, it will be easy to kill that Chinese kid to avenge Mr. Katahara. We have sent people to search for his whereabouts. Once we find his whereabouts, please Mr. Kameda to take action." Kameda Ichiro said coldly, "Of course I will not let that kid go, but with your search efficiency, by the time you find that kid, it will be too late. I have a method to find people. You only need to find the personal belongings of the target to locate his whereabouts. Do you have any personal belongings of that kid?" The square-faced man frowned slightly. Of course, he couldn't have any personal belongings of Lu Chuan. But he soon remembered that Naoki Kishimoto and his daughter also disappeared after Lu Chuan left. If nothing unexpected happened, they must have followed Lu Chuan. He quickly said, "We don't have the personal belongings of that Chinese kid, but the father and daughter of the Kishimoto family must be with him. If we find them, we can find the kid." Ichiro Kameda glanced at him and shouted, "Then what are you still standing there for?" The square-faced man shivered with fear and said quickly, I'll go to the Kishimoto family to find their personal belongings." Chapter 229 Golden Core Stage. In a mountain forest in the countryside, Lu Chuan was looking for a suitable place to break through. Zhang was like a little elf, jumping and playing around, and she didn't seem to be affected much by the previous events. Lu Chuan looked at this petite and cute girl, and was infected by her optimism, and couldn't help but smile. In fact, he still felt a lot of guilt towards Zhang. The other party obviously didn't like men, but he had a relationship with her. Even if it was to save his life, it would hurt her young heart. Before, Zhang had been with Kishimoto Hiruko, and Lu Chuan had no chance to apologize to Zhang. Now there were only the two of them in this place, and the feeling of guilt climbed up his heart again. Lu Chuan suddenly spoke. Zhang turned her head and glanced at Lu Chuan and asked contemptuously, "What are you doing, stinky man?" Lu Chuan looked at her seriously and said, "I'm sorry." Zhang originally thought that Lu Chuan was going to quarrel with her again, and she was ready to fight back. This sorry made her at a loss. She knew very well while Lu Chuan apologized, but she still lowered her head pretending not to understand and said, "Why do you say sorry to me?" Lu Chuan sighed and said, "I know you hate men. After that night, you should hate me even more, right? Although that kind of thing happened in order to survive, I actually have a deep sense of guilt in my heart, and I don't know how to make it up to you. You can make requests to me. As long as you can forgive me, I will agree to all your requests." When Zhang heard this, she felt a little embarrassed and wanted to tell Lu Chuan that she didn't hate him that much, but then she thought, if she said that, wouldn't it seem too easy to talk to her? So she pretended to be angry, stared at Lu Chuan, and said, "Will you agree to any request I make?" Lu Chuan nodded. Zhang said, "I want you to become a woman. Are you willing?" Lu Chuan glared and said with embarrassment, "Don't make trouble." Zhang snorted coldly, "Look, you are not sincere at all. It's not difficult to become a woman. You can't even do this little request. Why should I forgive you?" After that, she continued to walk forward angrily, with a snicker on her lips. Lu Chuan looked helpless, looking at Zhang lost back, and the guilt in his heart became stronger and stronger. "I'm afraid this girl will never forgive me in this life." Not long after, the two found a natural cave. Lu Chuan said, "This place is suitable for breakthrough. You wait at the entrance of the cave. There may be a lot of noise when I break through. Don't get too close and hurt you." Zhang snorted, "Who wants to be close to you?" After that, she ran directly to the stream outside the cave to play in the water. Lu Chuan smiled, without hesitation, turned and entered the cave. To be on the safe side, he set up restrictions around the cave to prevent it from collapsing due to the dissipation of power when he broke through. Then he sat cross-legged, sensed the 3 dragon veins in his body, drew power from them, and began to impact the golden core stage. Zhonglinger was bored outside the cave, drawing on the ground with a branch. Although the painting was crooked, it showed the charm very well. Anyone who knew Lu Chuan and saw this painting could tell that Zhonglinger was drawing Lu Chuan. She reached out and poked Lu Chuan's face on the ground. Stinky man. A day and a night passed. The next morning, in the cave, Lu Chuan was surrounded by golden light, and terrifying power spread out in all directions, shaking on the restrictions set by Lu Chuan, almost breaking through these restrictions. This process lasted for nearly an hour. Then the golden light around Lu Chuan began to converge, turning into 3 phantoms of divine dragons, which entangled around him for a while, and then all drilled into his danshan. Then Lu Chuan opened his eyes, and his aura surged. A stream of terrifying power spread out in all directions, causing the entire cave to tremble. His clothes could not withstand the impact of these forces, and turned directly into powder. After a long time, the cave finally calmed down. Lu Chuan hurriedly looked inside his danshan, and found that a golden elixir the size of a night pearl appeared inside, slowly rotating, constantly absorbing and breathing in the power that entered his danshan. This golden elixir was Lu Chuan's natal golden elixir. Only when the natal golden elixir was condensed could he be considered to have officially entered the golden elixir stage. Lu Chuan's face was full of excitement. Although the strength of the foundation building stage was not weak, it was only the stage of laying the foundation for the path of cultivation, and it could not release the real magical powers. Now seeing the natal golden elixir in his body, Lu Chuan dared to say that he had truly embarked on the path of a strong man. How come my golden elixir is so big? According to the inherited memory, a normal golden elixir should be only the size of a peanut, but mine is almost as big as an egg. Lu Chuan looked at his own golden elixir with some doubts, and felt that his golden elixir was a little beyond his imagination. However, what is certain is that the larger the golden elixir is, the more powerful it can be. Judging from the size of the golden elixir, the power that Lu Chuan can exert is probably 5 or 6 times stronger than that of practitioners of the same level. Not to mention martial artists of the same realm, he can basically kill them instantly. This is probably the change brought about by the true dragon fate. I don't know how much difference there is between my current strength and that of the Great Elder. Although practitioners have natural advantages, the martial arts can break through a path to the Tao in the Dharma ending age, which must not be underestimated. Moreover, the Great Elder has reached the Zuan realm for many years, and I'm afraid that he has reached a very high level. Lu Chuan, who has just entered the golden elixir stage, is probably not his opponent. After condensing the golden elixir, Lu Chuan's subsequent practice is to condense the golden elixir. Every time a level is broken through, the quality of the golden elixir will change. The so-called golden elixir is divided into 9 turns, and each turn is a level of heaven. After the life golden elixir is condensed into the 9-turn golden elixir, you can try to condense the nascent soul and impact the nascent soul stage. Lu Chuan took a deep breath, and felt that his golden elixir, which was as big as a night pearl, contained a majestic power. He could draw out the power that could destroy mountains at any time. In this way, no one in the entire island country will be my opponent. If anyone troubles me again, I will just slap him to death. He observed the movement in his body. Logically speaking, after a breakthrough in the Great Realm, the Langyang force is likely to riot. But he had sex with Zhonglinger not long ago, and the Langyang force in his body should be stable, but this thing has no rules, so he has to be on guard. It looks like it should be fine. Lu Chuan muttered to himself, but as soon as he finished this sentence, a stream of Langyang force quickly appeared and washed his meridians. Fuck, are you going to do this? I just said I was fine, and you guys just showed up. Are you kidding me? Lu Chuan gritted his teeth to suppress the power of Longyang, but after the Jiandan stage, the power of Longyang seemed to become more powerful. He was instantly wrapped in lust, and didn't even have a chance to breathe. His eyes turned red, and veins bulged on his forehead. In his heart, he just wanted to find a woman quickly, but there was no way there could be a woman in this cave except for stones. At this moment, Zhang Linga came into the cave cautiously. She heard the noise and was worried that something happened to Lu Chuan, so she ran in. Lu Chuan, are you okay? Chapter 230, Bodyguards only stay close to you. Lu Chuan turned his head sharply, and after seeing Zhang Linga's beautiful body, the long yang power in his body became even more violent. His instinct urged him to quickly pounce on the girl in front of him and ravage her to relieve the violence of the long yang power. If he hadn't had a trace of rationality, he would have probably already started to act. Zhang Linga was frightened by Lu Chuan's appearance, especially the look this guy had just given her, as if he wanted to eat her up, which made her nervous and scared. What's wrong with you? How did you become like this? Lu Chuan suppressed the impulse in his heart and said, I have a special physique. After the breakthrough, there is a chance that I will be controlled by lust. I must vent it in time, otherwise I will go crazy. Zhang Linga widened her eyes and said, what kind of dirty physique is this? It feels so perverted. Lu Chuan, now is not the time to talk about this. Linga, you better leave here quickly. I still have a little bit of reason now, so I can resist doing anything to you. But once I lose control, you won't be able to run away, even if you want to. I've hurt you once, and don't want to hurt you a second time. You'd better leave quickly, and don't worry about me. Zhang Linga nodded immediately. Then I'm leaving. Lu Chuan forced a smile. Let's go. Zhang Linga hesitated and asked, what will be the consequences if you can't vent it? Lu Chuan didn't want to burden Zhang Linga, so he said, there are no consequences, it's just that it's uncomfortable. The long yang power in his body seemed to oppose this sentence, madly flushing his meridians, making him scream in pain. Zhang Linga was shocked and asked quickly, really, are there really no consequences? Lu Chuan's painful expression began to twist, his body began to spasm, and he had to half kneel on the ground. He gritted his teeth and almost roared, no, you hurry up, I can't bear it anymore. Then I'm leaving. Zhang Linga turned and ran outside. Lu Chuan was relieved, but the long yang power in his body seemed to express dissatisfaction, torturing him madly, almost making him fall into madness. He thought that, after reaching the Jiandan stage, he should be able to withstand the riot of long yang power, even if he didn't vent through men and women. But when he felt the pain that eroded his bones and pierced his heart, he realized that he had thought too much. He panted in pain and slammed the ground with his hands to relieve his pain, but unfortunately it didn't have much effect. Zhang Linga, who was about to run out of the cave, listened to the painful panting and the sound of crazy pounding from inside, and her steps gradually slowed down. Her face was full of entanglement. After hesitating for a long time, she gritted her teeth and turned back. Damn man, you said you would be my personal bodyguard. Now you are my personal bodyguard, but I'm the one who sacrifices every time. Damn it. Lu Chuan thought that he would really die because of the riot of Long Yang's power. Just when he was in despair, two legs wearing black silk shoes suddenly appeared in his sight. He was stunned for a moment, then raised his head suddenly and found that Zhang Linga was standing in front of him with a face full of resentment, her eyes full of anger and indignation. Why are you back again? Zhang Linga snorted proudly and said, because I'm stupid, because I'm stupid, because I can't stand some bastard screaming in pain here. Lu Chuan was confused and just wanted to urge Zhang Linga to leave quickly. He had reached his limit. However, the next second, Zhang Linga came forward, stood on tiptoe, and kissed him. Lu Chuan's eyes widened, feeling the soft touch, like a person who was about to die of thirst in the desert suddenly found a source of water. He could no longer hold back and frantically absorbed it. He hugged Zhang Linga into his arms, kissed her passionately, and violently tore off her clothes. Zhang Linga snorted softly, and did not resist at all, just letting this rude guy bully her. In a flash, the cave was full of spring, and the orioles and swallows cried happily. The jade pendant on Zhang Linga's neck emitted golden light again, flickering and shaking. The next morning, Zhang Linga stared at Lu Chuan with red eyes, and it seemed that she had just cried. She didn't cry, because she did this with Lu Chuan again. After all, she took the initiative to run back. The reason she cried was because Lu Chuan was too endless, which made her a little collapsed, so she cried. However, even if she cried, Lu Chuan still didn't let her go. Are you a beast? I'm crying. Why do you keep going? Do you know that I'm dying of exhaustion? Zhang complained aggrievedly. Lu Chuan was full of shame and said, I was not rational at that time, right? How could I care so much? Zhang angrily hit Lu Chuan's chest with her little fist. Asshole, beast, bastard. Lu Chuan let her vent, not daring to breathe. After venting, Zhang picked up the clothes scattered on the ground and put them on. However, what she didn't expect was that those clothes had been torn into pieces and couldn't cover the body at all. She got angry for no reason again, threw the clothes directly on Lu Chuan's face, and shouted, you have ruined the clothes. How can I wear them? Lu Chuan quickly found a piece of his own clothes from the demon tower and said, your suitcases are all at King's house, so just wear my clothes for now. Zhang bit her lip and glared at Lu Chuan. After a snort, she picked up Lu Chuan's clothes and put them on herself. She was petite, and wearing Lu Chuan's clothes just covered her upper body to the thighs, which looked pretty good. Lu Chuan stood up and said, I have successfully broken through. Let's go back to the safe house to find them and solve these troubles in the island country as soon as possible. Zhang didn't say anything and wanted to stand up from the ground. But she tried several times before she found that her legs were so soft that she had no strength to stand up. She bit her lip and looked at Lu Chuan, thinking that you can't be gentle, you are almost ruining me, and then said unhappily, you carry me. Seeing this, Lu Chuan showed a trace of shame on his face and quickly took out a few pills and handed them to Zhang. You take these pills first and recover. This time Zhang did not refuse, took the pills, and ate them viciously. Lu Chuan did not carry her, but picked her up like a princess. Zhang looked up at Lu Chuan, a little shy, and said, no, didn't I ask you to carry me? Lu Chuan smiled and said, it will be a bit bumpy to carry, I'd better hold you. Then he left the cave and walked towards the safe house. Zhang thought to herself, I never thought that a rude guy like you could be so considerate. It's really strange. Thinking of this, she pretended to lean on Lu Chuan's chest casually. The two returned to the safe house. Lu Chuan walked over and knocked on the door as agreed, but there was no response for a long time. He frowned, and a bad premonition arose in his heart, and then he forced the door open. The safe house was in a mess, with various items scattered all over the floor, and the furniture fell to the ground. It was obvious that someone had smashed it. The figures of Suzumiya Yukina and the other two had disappeared. Chapter 231 Only believe what you think is right. Zhang was also startled by this scene, and hurried over and said, how could it become like this? Could it be that Sister Kingsley and the others have been captured? Lu Chuan concentrated on observing the situation in the room, and soon found a piece of paper on the table. He hurried over, picked up the paper, and saw a sentence written in the Japanese language. If you don't want the three of them to die tragically, come to the Sakura Kingdom to find me. You only have 3 days. The name of this sentence was Kamidarichiro. They were captured by Kamidarichiro. This Kamidarichiro had fought with Kitahara Sasuke to a draw, and the two had a deep relationship. It seems that he wants to avenge Kitahara Sasuke. Lu Chuan speculated. Zhang was worried and asked, what should we do then? Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes and said, since they don't know what's good for them, then I naturally don't have to be polite to them. I can kill Kitahara Sasuke, the #1 martial artist in the island country, and I can also kill this so-called island country immortal. After that, he grabbed Zhang hand and took her to the Sakura Kingdom. If Suzumiya Yukina and the others were caught on the day he took Zhang to find a place to break through, then today is exactly the 3rd day. He must rush there as soon as possible, otherwise Suzumiya Yukina and the other two might be in trouble. Sakura Kingdom, a famous tourist destination in the island country. Every time the cherry blossoms bloom, this place will become the most gorgeous place in the entire island country. Now is the cherry blossom season, and the whole area has turned into a sea of cherry blossoms, which is beautiful. However, this place has not been open to tourists since 3 days ago. It is rumored that this place has been booked by a big shot in the island country, and no outsiders are allowed to enter. In the Sakura Kingdom, under a lush cherry tree, Kamidarichiro knelt in front of the coffee table and quietly tasted the tea. The square-faced man and 4 other 9th level masters of the realm of transformation stood on both sides of him, with respectful faces. Suzumiya Yukina, Kishimoto Hiruko and Kishimoto Naoki were hung under a cherry tree opposite. At this time, the 3 were exhausted and dying, with marks on their bodies from the whip. Not far from them, there was a group of reporters waiting. The square-faced man glanced at the group of reporters and asked, "Mr. Kameda, we only need to secretly deal with the Chinese kid in this matter. Why do we need to find so many reporters?" Ichiro Kameda took a sip of tea and said lightly, "This Chinese kid came to my island country and killed Kitahara Sasuke. Isn't this a provocation to my island country? Our conditions are difficult, and it is difficult to produce a natural ninja. The Chinese martial arts have never taken us seriously. If we secretly deal with this kid, the Chinese side will still think we are weak and can be bullied. So I must get rid of that Chinese kid in front of these media. One of the reasons for doing this is to avenge my brother Sasuke, and the other is to tell the world that a natural ninja has been born in my island country. Even the Chinese martial arts world must give our island country some face in the future. When that kid comes, I will use my most powerful and gorgeous tricks to get rid of him. Only in this way will others recognize the strength of my island country." The square-faced man nodded quickly. "Mr. Kameda, please understand." He glanced at the time and said, "It's just that today is the 3rd day. Could it be that the boy is afraid and has just hidden himself?" Kameda Ichiro said lightly, "It doesn't matter if he hides. These media have already publicized this matter. If the Chinese boy doesn't show up, everyone will only think that the Chinese are as timid as mice. In the future, they will definitely not be able to raise their heads in front of us." The square-faced man suddenly realized and praised Kameda Ichiro for his thoughtful consideration, which was admirable. At the same time, Lu Chuan and Zonglinger had already boarded the special bus to the kingdom of Sakura. Both of them were unfamiliar with the geography of the island country, and they asked people for a long time before they got on the bus. Many people in the car were discussing the news of the past 2 days. They all said that the immortal of the island country was born and planned to teach the ignorant Chinese a lesson. Lu Chuan and Zonglinger looked very ugly after hearing this. This was a man wearing glasses who looked at the 2 of them and asked with a smile, "You 2 are from China, right?" Lu Chuan glanced at the man and said, "What's the matter?" He had just noticed that this man kept looking at Zonglinger with an extremely obscene look, so he didn't have a good impression of this guy. The man with glasses laughed and said, "I'm also from China. It is fate that we meet in a foreign country. Are you also here to watch the immortal from the island country teach the Chinese rats a lesson? That Chinese boy is really embarrassing for us Chinese. He actually came here to provoke the immortal from the island country. Now people are waiting for him to show up, but he is scared. He has completely lost face for us Chinese. If I meet this guy, I will slap him twice." Lu Chuan was speechless. Just when he was about to speak, Zonglinger on the side said angrily, "You are Chinese after all. Without knowing the reason, you determined that it was that Chinese boy who provoked this so-called immortal. Isn't this just boosting others' morale and destroying your own prestige? How do you know that it is not the immortal from the island country who is bullying people?" The man with glasses sneered and said, "Ichiro Kameda has been famous for many years. How can he bully a brat who is only in his 20s? Girl, although you are beautiful, you still have to use your brain sometimes. You." Zonglinger gnashed her teeth in anger. Lu Chuan said, "Don't pay attention to him. This kind of person only believes what he thinks is right. It's a waste of time to argue with him." Zonglinger felt that what Lu Chuan said made sense, nodded, and stopped talking. Not long after, the car drove to the outskirts of the Sakura Kingdom. Lu Chuan and Zonglinger got out of the car and saw that there were already a lot of people gathered here, all of whom came to watch the fun. Because they were not allowed to enter, they could only wait outside to see if they could get first-hand information by luck. Lu Chuan glanced around and walked directly towards the gate with Zonglinger. Seeing this, the man with glasses hurriedly stopped them and said, "Where are you 2 going? They won't let you in. You will be kicked out if you go to the gate. That Chinese boy has already embarrassed us Chinese. You 2 should stop making a fool of yourself." At this time, Several island ninjas came over with samurai swords, glared at Lu Chuan and Zonglinger, and shouted, "No outsiders are allowed to enter here, especially you Chinese. Get out of here." The man with glasses said, "See, I told you, and you still don't believe it. Come with me quickly, and don't embarrass yourself." Then he looked at the ninjas, and said with a smile, "My friends are ignorant. Calm down. I will take them away now." Lu Chuan was speechless, and released a spiritual power directly, which hit the ninjas. Several ninjas flew backwards in an instant, and fell to the ground, unconscious. The man with glasses was stunned for a moment. How dare you attack a ninja? Don't you want to live?" Lu Chuan said coldly, "I'm the Chinese rat they are talking about. I dared to kill Kitahara Sasuke, so how could I not dare to attack those ninjas? Didn't you say at that time that you would slap me twice if you saw me? Come on, I'll give you this chance. After you slap me, I'll go and settle the score with Kamida Ichiro." Chapter 232 Lu Chuan's Fury. The man with glasses was frightened and shivered. He looked at Lu Chuan in disbelief and said, "You are that Chinese boy?" Lu Chuan snorted coldly, "Yes, you want to beat me? Hurry up and do it. Don't waste my time." The man with glasses immediately squeezed out an awkward smile on his face and said tremblingly, Brother, I'm kidding. I'm just talking nonsense. Don't take it seriously." He saw clearly the scene where Lu Chuan blew away 7 or 8 ninjas with one palm. He couldn't easily provoke such a terrifying master. And from what Lu Chuan said, the reason why Kamida Ichiro was waiting for him here was because he killed Kitahara Sasuke. Who is Kitahara Sasuke? He is the #1 martial artist in the island country. The man with glasses realized that he was fooled by public opinion. How could the big man who could kill Kitahara Sasuke be a rat? Lu Chuan looked at the man with glasses and sneered, saying, "If you don't slap me, I will slap you. You slandered me in front of me at that time. It should be okay for me to slap you twice, right?" The man with glasses froze, and then smiled awkwardly. No problem." Lu Chuan slapped the man with glasses on the face without saying a word. 2 slaps. The man's glasses flew off, and there was a bright red slap mark on both sides of his face. "I want to slap too." Zonglinger ran over and raised her hand to slap the man with glasses twice. "Use your brain more in the future. Don't be fooled by others at every turn. And you are still here to speak for others after being fooled," Lu Chuan said coldly. The man with glasses didn't dare to refute and quickly nodded and said, "Yes. Lu Chuan then took Zonglinger to the direction of the door. He directly released a stream of energy. With a bang, the tightly closed door flew out directly. The people who came to watch the excitement noticed this movement and turned their heads to look over. "Look, that Chinese guy has appeared. Oh my god, this guy is so scary. Isn't he said to be a coward? Why do I feel like he's even more powerful than Ichiro Kamida? How could this guy be more powerful than Ichiro Kamida? Isn't it just knocking an iron door away from the air? Ichiro Kamida can definitely do it." Many people took this opportunity to follow Lu Chuan and Zonglinger inside. Someone noticed the man with glasses, whose face was swollen like a bun, after being beaten by Lu Chuan, and quickly took out his mobile phone to open the video, ran over and asked, "Are you Chinese? I just saw you being slapped twice by that Chinese boy. Why didn't you fight back? You Chinese are too cowardly." Hearing this, the man with glasses thought to himself that this time he was really embarrassed. So many people took out their mobile phones to record the video and then uploaded it to the internet. He will definitely be scolded by his compatriots. But soon, he thought of a way to deal with it. He quickly straightened his chest and raised his head and cursed in fluent Japanese language. "Bagalu. I'm a pure-blooded Japanese. Don't slander my nationality at will." Lu Chuan took Zonglinger along the road, covered with cherry blossoms. Soon, he saw Kamida Ichiro and his group. At the same time, he also saw Suzumiya Yukina and the other 2 hanging on the tree. At this time, a man was holding a whip and whipping them fiercely. Naoki Kishimoto had thick skin and flesh, so it didn't matter if he was whipped a few times. But Suzumiya Yukina and Hiruko Kishimoto were both girls with delicate skin and tender flesh. Such whips whipped them directly, causing their skin to burst and blood to flow. Both of them had whip marks on their faces. Such scars are most likely to cause stuttering, which is tantamount to disfigurement for the 2 of them. Seeing this scene, Lu Chuan's heart instantly ignited with rage. On the other side, the square-faced man noticed the commotion at the gate, and then saw Lu Chuan and Zhang Ling walking towards this side, and hurriedly said to Kamida Ichiro, "Mr. Kamida, that kid is here." Kamida Ichiro still sipped his tea slowly, and said lightly, "He made me wait for so long. Obviously he didn't take me seriously, and I can't let him think that I have a good temper. Kill the 3 people hanging on the tree in front of him, as a lesson for him." The square-faced man showed a vicious smile on his face and said, "Yes." Then he picked up 3 samurai swords and first came to Suzumiya Yukina. He turned his head to look at Lu Chuan in the distance, with a playful smile on his face, and then picked up a samurai sword, and inserted it into Suzumiya Yukina's stomach. Seeing this scene, Lu Chuan was instantly furious, turned his head, and said to Zhang Ling, "You wait here, I'll go kill all these beasts." Then he rushed towards the square-faced man. The square-faced man didn't hesitate, and took up a knife, and stabbed it into Hiruko Kishimoto's stomach. Ichiro Kamida saw Lu Chuan rushing over with murderous intent, and a smile appeared on his face. He stood up and said lightly, "Anger is good. The angrier you are, the greater the potential for explosion. In this way, everyone can see that I have solved a difficult character. Otherwise, how can those ordinary people see the power of my shinin?" He turned his head to look at the reporters not far away, and said loudly, "Get ready, I will use the most gorgeous tricks to kill this Chinese kid later. I hope you can record the most exciting scene." All the reporters hurriedly adjusted their equipment. Lu Chuan watched the square-faced man stab Hiruko Kishimoto again, and the anger in his heart had already reached its peak. Ichiro Kamida threatened the lives of the 3 of them to let him show up, but when he came, he asked someone to stab Suzumiya Yukina and others with a knife. This kind of person who doesn't keep his word is the person Lu Chuan hates the most in his life. The golden elixir in the danshin rotated rapidly, releasing spiritual power continuously, pushing Lu Chuan's momentum to the peak. He leaped up and flew directly to the square-faced man. The square-faced man picked up the knife and stabbed it into Naoki Kishimoto's body. "Fuck you," Lu Chuan roared, gathering all his strength and trying to hit the square-faced man. However, at this moment, Kamida Ichiro appeared with a proud smile on his face, muttering, "Boy, in my life, I have learned a total of 18 peerless moves, and any one of them is not inferior to your Chinese martial arts. Today I will use all these 18 moves on you. Even if you die, you should feel honored." Then he began to think about which move he should use first to look more handsome, so that the world can see that he is still as powerful as before. Lu Chuan frowned, thinking that this old man was too much of a nuisance, and cursed directly, "Get out of my way." Then he condensed all the power of the golden core stage and slapped it towards Kamida Ichiro. Kamida Ichiro thought it was just an ordinary attack, and planned to use a complicated set of moves to resolve it. However, the next second, he was completely stunned by Lu Chuan's fierce momentum, and then he didn't even react, and Lu Chuan slapped him on the top of his head with a powerful palm. Bang! Kamida Ichiro's eyes were wide open, and he died instantly. His body was like a cannonball, crossing the entire Sakura kingdom, knocking down dozens of trees, stirring up layers of dust, and stunned all the people who came to watch the excitement. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 233 Ancient Jade. Am I seeing things? The one who just flew out was Kamida Ichiro? Isn't it said that Kamida Ichiro has become a heavenly ninja that only appears once every 100 years in our island country? How can he be so vulnerable in front of this Chinese boy? Is our island country immortal, so fragile in front of a Chinese warrior? The whole audience was silent. The reporters who had been prepared were stunned and at a loss. They were still waiting for Kamida Ichiro to defeat Lu Chuan in a gorgeous manner, so that they could shoot excellent materials as news headlines. As a result, Kamida Ichiro was slapped to death by Lu Chuan, which made them not know what to do. Lu Chuan didn't care about the reactions of the people around him at all, and didn't even care about Kamida Ichiro's death. What he cared about most now was the safety of Suzumiya Yukina and the other 2. After the square-faced man inserted the last samurai sword into Kishimoto Naoki's stomach, he saw Lu Chuan rushing towards him, and a sneer appeared on his face. He was not afraid of Lu Chuan at all, because he knew that Ichiro Kamida would definitely try to stop Lu Chuan. Just as he expected, when Lu Chuan was about to rush in front of him, Ichiro Kamida made a move. In his imagination, Lu Chuan would be subdued by Ichiro Kamida in one move, and then he would show the strength of a ninja, letting this rat from China see how powerful the ninja of the island country is. However, the next second, he saw Lu Chuan slap Ichiro Kamida on the top of his head. Ichiro Kamida's skull shattered instantly, his eyeballs almost popped out, and then flew out like a cannonball. He was completely dumbfounded. The existence that was like a god in his mind was so vulnerable in front of Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan got rid of Ichiro Kamida and his eyes fell on the square-faced man. The square-faced man was so scared that he quickly retreated and begged for mercy, saying, I was just following orders. Lu Chuan snorted coldly, then why don't you obey orders and die? Then he turned into a residual shadow and instantly appeared in front of the square-faced man, grabbed his neck, and with a sudden force, he ended his life. The remaining 4 9th level masters of the transformation realm were all terrified. At this time, Lu Chuan was a devil in their eyes. Kamida Ichiro was like a 3-year-old child in front of him, and the 9th grade Jonin was like grass in front of him. As the 9th grade Jonin who were once highly respected, they were now scared to death. The 4 people turned around and ran without hesitation. Lu Chuan snorted coldly, and 3 white lights appeared, instantly penetrating the bodies of the 4 people. The 4 people fell to the ground while running, without any breath. After solving these troubles, Lu Chuan hurried to Suzumiya Yukina and the other 2 and let them down from the tree. The 3 people were whipped and hung on the tree for 3 days. Finally, they were pierced by samurai swords. At this time, they were all on the verge of death, with blurred consciousness and blood spitting out of their mouths. The people watching the excitement were still immersed in the shock of the scene just now, but many people kept staring at Lu Chuan. After seeing him rescue the 3 people hanging on the tree, they couldn't help shaking their heads. Although this guy's powerful, it is obvious that the 3 people hanging on the tree will not survive. No matter how much he saves them, it will be useless. That's right. This guy's really good at killing people, but saving people is 10,000 times more difficult than killing people. Even if he has all the means, he will definitely not be able to save the lives of these 3 people. Lu Chuan carefully observed the conditions of the 3 people, then took a deep breath, grabbed the samurai sword stuck in Suzumiya Yukina's body, gritted his teeth, and pulled it out violently. Suddenly someone exclaimed, "Is this guy crazy? He will only make that person die faster by doing this." But Lu Chuan lifted up Suzumiya Yukina's clothes, revealing her bloody belly. A golden light appeared on his palm, and he gently touched the wound. Soon, the wound there began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Everyone was shocked. They had lived in the world for half of their lives, and had never seen such a magical way to stop bleeding. After helping Suzumiya Yukina stop bleeding, Lu Chuan did the same thing, pulling out the samurai swords from Kishimoto Hiruko and Kishimoto Naoki, and used spiritual power to heal their wounds. But this was not enough to make their injuries better. Just like Suming at the beginning, Lu Chuan also refined the 9 turns resurrection pill to save him. Fortunately, Lu Chuan has now reached the golden pill stage. Without the 9 turns resurrection pill, he can also rely on other means to bring seriously injured people back to life. Without hesitation, he immediately performed a hand seal, forming a complex seal, and then gently tapped the place where Suzumiya Yukina was seriously injured, and a strange power began to be transmitted into it. This method is called the rejuvenation technique, which is a relatively advanced treatment method that can only be performed when you reach the Jinden stage. No matter how serious the injury is, as long as there is one last breath left, the rejuvenation technique can save it, but it takes a huge amount of power to perform the rejuvenation technique. For example, if you have just broken through to the Jinden stage, the Jinden of the first and second turns is simply difficult to support. Fortunately, Lu Chuan's Jinden is several times larger than that of a normal Jinden stage practitioner, so he can barely perform this method. His acupuncture also has the effect of bringing the dead back to life. but acupuncture is for serious illnesses, and the rejuvenation technique is for serious injuries. The two are not the same concept. After a long time, the power in Lu Chuan's Jinden was exhausted, and he finally saved Suzumiya Yukina. He turned his head to look at Hiruko Kishimoto and Naoki Kishimoto, frowning. His current strength is only enough to save one person, and Hiruko Kishimoto and Naoki Kishimoto are already in danger, and could lose their lives at any time. If he waits until he recovers his strength to save them, they may have already died. If I can find a huge source of power, I can also use external force to perform the rejuvenation technique, but where can I find something with such a huge power now? Lu Chuan thought quickly. The dragon vein was used by him to break through, and had been consumed long ago. Although the Zuan Huan Qi is powerful, this thing involves the original power of the universe. If it is used to treat people, it will probably turn Hiruko Kishimoto and Naoki Kishimoto into ashes in an instant. At this moment, he suddenly thought of the ancient jade in the transfer formation. That ancient jade can serve as the foundation of the formation, and naturally contains incomparable and majestic power. Lu Chuan quickly took out the ancient jade, and then stimulated the power in the ancient jade to perform the rejuvenation technique, to treat Hiruko Kishimoto and Naoki Kishimoto. At the same time, in the volcanic cave, Huangquan Patriarch was scowling, thinking about training a new servant to serve him, but unfortunately he could only wait for someone to stray into this place before bewitching him, otherwise he couldn't create a servant out of thin air. I finally waited for the opportunity to break through the seal, but that bitch from the demon clan ruined my plan. When I get out of this seal one day, I will definitely kill the demon clan and strip that bitch's clothes off. At this moment, Huangquan Patriarch suddenly had a sense of perception. Huh. Someone actually activated the soul nourishing jade that I used to carry with me? It's really strange. This jade can only be activated by people who practice cultivation. Since I left it in the world as a backup, no one has activated it for hundreds of years. I want to see which unlucky little guy got this precious jade of mine. Chapter 234, Huangquan Patriarch's Backhand. Huangquan Patriarch quickly sensed the situation around the soul nurturing jade by relying on the mark left in the soul nurturing jade. When he saw that it was Lu Chuan who was using the soul nurturing jade to treat others, he was stunned, and then a sinister smile appeared on his face. I didn't expect it to be you, kid. It seems that my luck is not that bad. It just so happens that I need a servant who can do things for me outside. You are a cultivator, so it must be more convenient for you to do things. In this case, I will use the soul hidden in the soul nurturing jade to control your mind and make you my servant. The ancient jade that Lu Chuan got from the Biyuan family was a piece of precious jade that Huangquan Patriarch carried with him in his early years. It contained tremendous power and had the effect of nourishing the soul. It could even allow the soul of a destroyed body to reside in it. At that time, Huangquan Patriarch had many enemies. In order to prevent himself from being captured and sealed by the enemy, he left himself a backup plan. He separated a wisp of soul and hid it in the soul-raising jade and spread the soul-raising jade into the world. In this way, once he was sealed, when someone activated the dragon soul jade, he could rely on the wisp of soul in the soul-raising jade to control others and make a comeback. Later, as he expected, he was really sealed in the volcano of the island country. But he had long forgotten about the soul-raising jade. If Lu Chuan hadn't activated the soul-raising jade today, he would definitely not have thought that he had such a piece of jade before. Because his strength had not reached the nascent soul stage, when he separated his soul, the strength of the soul that was separated was not strong, only the late stage of foundation building. This kid's strength is only the late stage of foundation building, and my soul is more than enough to control him. Without hesitation, Huangquan Patriarch immediately used the soul hidden in the soul-raising jade to control Lu Chuan's mind. But the next second, his face changed, and he was shocked to find that Lu Chuan's strength had reached the golden core realm. How is this possible? This kid was clearly in the late stage of foundation building a few days ago. How come he broke through in such a short time? You know, the breakthrough of practitioners is often calculated in 10 years, decades, or even hundreds of years. After all, this is against the will of heaven, and it is naturally very difficult to break through. There are very few people like Lu Chuan who have the fate of a true dragon and extraordinary talent, even on Earth in the Dharma-ending age, who can break through so quickly. He is in his 20s at the Golden Core Realm. How can he break through so quickly? Thinking back to the time when he took nearly 100 years to break through to the Golden Core Realm, Huang Quan's face was full of jealousy. At the same time, he also gave up the idea of controlling Lu Chuan by relying on the soul in the soul-nourishing jade. After all, the other party has reached the Golden Core Realm, and his soul is only in the late stage of foundation building. Once he takes action, the soul will be killed instantly, and there will be no chance at all. Damn it. I hate these geniuses the most in my life. When I break through the seal and get out of this place, I will definitely catch this kid and take over his body. Then I will also feel the feeling of being envied. Huang Quan Patriarch said with gritted teeth, and at the same time thought about how to use this ray of soul in the soul-nourishing jade. Even if this soul is only the strength of the late stage of foundation building, as long as it is used properly, it can also play an unexpected role. He relied on the mark to observe the situation around Lu Chuan. After seeing Lu Chuan's treatment of Hiruko Kishimoto and Naoki Kishimoto, he immediately had a plan and showed a sinister smile on his face. In the Sakura Kingdom, Lu Chuan was using the power of the ancient jade to perform the rejuvenation technique to treat Hiruko Kishimoto. Suddenly, he instinctively shuddered, and a trace of doubt appeared on his face. Strange, why do I feel like someone is peeping at me? And it's full of malice. He turned his head and looked around, but did not find anything unusual. Thinking it was his illusion, he continued to concentrate on treating Hiruko Kishimoto. Soon, the rejuvenation technique took effect, and Kishimoto Hiruko's condition stabilized. Lu Chuan came to Kishimoto Naoki again, and performed the rejuvenation technique again. The ancient jade released a stream of power, healing Kishimoto Naoki's injuries. What Lu Chuan did not notice was that during this process, a special power entered Kishimoto Naoki's body. After a long time, Kishimoto Naoki's injuries also completely improved. Lu Chuan breathed a sigh of relief and put the ancient jade away, using the rejuvenation technique on 3 people in a row. Although there was the power in the ancient jade to support him, it was also very consuming for him. At this moment, he was exhausted. Suzumiya Yukina and the other two lay on the ground for a while, and then sat up. They all quickly checked their bodies, and found that except for the whip marks, the fatal injuries had disappeared. The 3 looked at Lu Chuan with shock on their faces. They never expected that he could even bring the dead back to life. Suzumiya Yukina looked at Lu Chuan gratefully and said, "Lu Chuan-kun, thank you." Kishimoto Hiruko and Kishimoto Naoki also expressed their gratitude to Lu Chuan excitedly. Lu Chuan waved his hand and said, "You were arrested because of me, and I should save you." At this time, the people watching the excitement around were already stunned and shocked. My god, these 3 people were actually saved by him. How did he do it? Under normal circumstances, the 3 people would definitely die, but he just made a few simple gestures in front of the 3 people, and the 3 people came back to life. Is this the magical medical skill of the ancient East? This is too magical. This person is not only extremely powerful, he killed Kamida Ichiro with 1 palm, and he also has the medical skills to bring the dead back to life. He can be called a master of both medicine and martial arts. A man wearing a black robe and a hood, whose face could not be seen, commented on Lu Chuan. Zhang Ling ran over, looked at Kishimoto Hiruko and the other 2 with concern, and asked, "Sister Hiruko, are you alright?" Lu Chuan stood up, turned his head and looked around, and said, "Ichiro Kamida is dead. No one should dare to trouble us here, but this is a place of trouble. It is not suitable to stay for a long time. Let's leave here first." Several people nodded, stood up from the ground, and followed Lu Chuan to the outside. The people who were watching the excitement immediately made way for them. These people looked at Lu Chuan with awe, and they didn't even dare to breathe. Just when Lu Chuan and his party were about to walk out of the Sakura Kingdom, a young man with dyed yellow hair suddenly rushed over. He held a gun in his hand, pointed at Lu Chuan with anger, and shouted, "Bagger! You dare to kill my grandfather, I will kill you." Lu Chuan frowned, his figure quickly disappeared from the spot, and then appeared in front of the yellow-haired man, snatched the gun from his hand, and disassembled the gun into parts in a few seconds. Seeing this, the yellow-haired man's face changed drastically, and he turned around and was about to run. Lu Chuan grabbed his neck and lifted him up from the ground. "Are you Kamidarichiro's grandson?" The yellow-haired man looked at Lu Chuan with gritted teeth and said, "That's right. You dare to kill my grandfather, you will not die well." Lu Chuan curled his lips and said, "He is looking for death himself. It's not my fault. If you are looking for death like your grandfather, I don't mind sending you to see him." In the crowd, the man in a black robe and a hood who had been watching all this silently saw this scene, walked over immediately and said, "Lu Chuan, you can't kill him." Chapter 235 Law Enforcer. Lu Chuan turned his head and looked at the black-robed man and said coldly, "You said no, so no?" Then he pinched the yellow-haired man's neck with force. The yellow-haired man was instantly unable to breathe, his face flushed, and he struggled in pain. Seeing this, the black-robed man instantly burst out with a fierce momentum and rushed towards Lu Chuan. "Lu Chuan, I advise you not to do anything stupid, otherwise you will regret it." Lu Chuan felt the other party's momentum and frowned. This person turned out to be a master of the mysterious realm. He squinted his eyes at the man in black robe and asked, "Who are you? Why do you want to meddle in other people's business?" The man in black robe stretched out his white and slender hand, handed a certificate to Lu Chuan, and said, "I'm a member of the law enforcers, and I have been ordered to come here to supervise you." A trace of doubt appeared on Lu Chuan's face. "Law enforcers? Never heard of them." The man in black robe raised his head slightly, but because of the hood, his face was still not clear. "Popularizing information about law enforcers with you is one of my tasks. You are from China, so you must know the existence of the supervisory department. The task of the supervisory department is to supervise warriors and prevent them from breaking the law with force. The duties of us law enforcers are similar to those of the supervisory department. We also supervise people with extraordinary strength. It's just that we law enforcers are only responsible for international affairs, and we only supervise extraordinary people. The so-called extraordinary people refer to the masters of the mysterious realm among warriors, the ninjas of the island country, the superpowered people in the United States, as well as masters of magic, psychics, and all those who possess supernatural powers. The power of this kind of people has exceeded the cognition of ordinary people, so they must be supervised. Otherwise, once they abuse their power, it will inevitably lead to the destruction of lives and widespread grief. Law enforcers are born for this. We are formed by extraordinary people from all over the world. We specialize in dealing with the malicious incidents of extraordinary people abusing their power and maintaining world order. According to the regulations, extraordinary people are not allowed to kill ordinary people who are powerless, otherwise they will be judged by law enforcers. Your strength already belongs to the category of extraordinary people. If you kill Kitahara Sasuke and Kamidarichiro, these law enforcers will not care, but the guy you caught is just an ordinary person. Once you kill him, it will violate the regulations of the law enforcers, and I have the right to take you back for trial. After listening to the explanation of the black-robed man, Lu Chuan raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that there would be such a department dedicated to supervising extraordinary people. And from what the black-robed man said, those who can become law enforcers must be at least in the Zuan realm. A department composed entirely of Zuan realm masters. Just thinking about it will know how terrible it is. Lu Chuan didn't want to cause any trouble, so he planned to let the yellow-haired man go. After all, Kamidarichiro was dead, and these small characters posed no threat to him. However, after hearing what the black-robed man said, the yellow-haired man laughed. He showed a sneer on his face and said, "So you can't kill me. If you kill me, you will be caught too. In this way, I don't need to worry about anything. Although I can't deal with you, you must have relatives, friends, and close people, right? Although my grandfather is dead, the foundation of our Kamida family is still there. I want to find someone to sneak into your China and kill the people around you. It's not easy. Just wait, I will make you regret it." Ha 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 ha. Lu Chuan's face suddenly darkened. The black-robed man's face also changed. He looked at the yellow-haired man and said, "Are you crazy? You will only anger him." The yellow-haired man said fearlessly, "What am I afraid of? You are here. He can't kill me anyway. I just want to piss him off to death." Lu Chuan grabbed the yellow-haired man's neck and lifted him up from the ground. The yellow-haired man was panicked and said, "What are you doing? The law enforcers are watching us. If you dare to touch me, you will have a hard time." Lu Chuan snorted coldly and said, "I was originally planning to let you go, but you reminded me that people like you will cause endless troubles and must be eradicated." The man in black robe quickly said, "Lu Chuan, don't be impulsive. Killing people won't solve the problem." Lu Chuan turned his head and glanced at the man in black robe and said, "You heard what he said just now. If I don't kill him, my relatives and friends will be in trouble. I can't keep such a person in the world. That would be irresponsible to the people around me." The man in black robe said anxiously, "What he said is indeed irritating, but this can be avoided. Don't do stupid things." Lu Chuan sneered, "Avoid? As long as he is still alive, there will always be a way to do what he said, and you law enforcers only deal with extraordinary people. You will never interfere with the calculations of ordinary people like him. At that time, the people around me will still be in trouble. I don't object to you wanting to maintain order, but I'm working hard to make myself stronger, also to prevent people around me from being bullied and threatened, so only by killing him can we avoid all unnecessary troubles." The yellow-haired man kept struggling and shouted, "Let me go. You can't kill ordinary people in front of law enforcers, otherwise you will be arrested and tried." The black-robed man wanted to persuade him, "Lu Chuan, you." Lu Chuan curled his lips, and without hesitation, he broke the yellow-haired man's neck. The yellow-haired man's eyes widened. He thought that the appearance of the black-robed man would make Lu Chuan dare not attack him, but he didn't expect that he would lose his life in the end. Lu Chuan threw the yellow-haired man's body on the ground. The black-robed man sighed, and then said to Lu Chuan in a cold tone, "Lu Chuan, you are an extraordinary person, but you kill ordinary people. This violates the rules of law enforcement. Please go back with me and accept the trial." Lu Chuan said lightly, "What if I don't go back with you?" The black-robed man said, "Then don't blame me for being rude." Lu Chuan smiled slightly and said, "You should have seen when I killed Ichiro with a palm. Do you think you can take such a palm from me?" After saying that, he raised his hand, and the spiritual power gathered on it, revealing a terrifying momentum. The black-robed man was obviously a little afraid, but he did not retreat. He immediately made a posture to fight and said, "Your palm is indeed amazing, but we law enforcers are not vegetarians. You killed ordinary people in front of me, which is already a provocation to the majesty of law enforcers. Today I must take you back." Lu Chuan sneered, "Then take it." After saying that, he slapped the black-robed man with a palm. The black-robed man was about to take it immediately, but the next second, a talisman appeared on Lu Chuan's palm, and it exploded in front of the black-robed man. Because the incident happened suddenly, the black-robed man didn't react, and the next second, she fell into a daze. Lu Chuan quickly turned around, looked at Zhang Linga and the others, and said, "She has been hit by my shocking talisman, and will be in a daze for a short period of time. Let's go." At that time, when he was treating Suzumiya Yukina and the other two, his strength had been exhausted. How could he deal with a master of the mysterious realm now? He was just bluffing just now. Zhang Linga and the others did not dare to hesitate, and quickly followed Lu Chuan. After a while, the black-robed man came back to his senses. When she saw that Lu Chuan had disappeared, she gritted her teeth and said, "Asshole, I must catch you." Chapter 236 Zhang Linga's decision. Airport. Lu Chuan and Zhang Linga boarded the plane together. Not long after, the plane took off, and Lu Chuan was relieved. After leaving the Sakura Kingdom, Lu Chuan took everyone back to the Kishimoto family house. He called Zhang Xiannian and asked about the law enforcers. He learned that the law enforcers were indeed a very powerful organization. Zhang Xiannian also emphasized that Lu Chuan should not provoke the law enforcers. Lu Chuan looked helpless and said that he had been targeted by the law enforcers and asked Zhang Xiannian what to do. Zhang Xiannian was speechless, but he still pointed out the direction for Lu Chuan and asked him to take Zhang Linga back to China immediately without any stop. Although the law enforcers are the department that supervises and manages extraordinary people, they are only responsible for international affairs, and the warriors in China are under the charge of the supervision department, so the law enforcers cannot interfere in domestic affairs. As long as Lu Chuan returns to China, the law enforcers will have no way to deal with Lu Chuan. So Lu Chuan immediately bought a ticket back to China and rushed to the airport with Zhang Linga. Before leaving, he gave Suzumiya Yukina, Kishimoto Hiruko and Kishimoto Naoki a bottle of debridement cream each, asking them to treat the whip marks on their bodies, and repeatedly emphasized that the debridement cream can only be applied externally and cannot be taken internally. Originally, he thought that Kishimoto Hiruko and Kishimoto Naoki would return to China with him and Zhang Linga, but Kishimoto Naoki said that he had something to do in the island country and would not be able to return for a few days, so he could not go with them. Lu Chuan did not hesitate and made an appointment with Kishimoto Naoki and Kishimoto Hiruko to have dinner together after returning to China, and then took Zhang Linga on the flight back to China. On the plane, Zhang Linga stared out the window for a while, then turned to look at Lu Chuan and said, "I want the debridement cream too." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "The debridement cream is used to treat external injuries and scars. You were not whipped, so what do you need this for?" Zhang Linga stared at Lu Chuan and said, "I have a scar in my heart." Lu Chuan fell silent. After a long time, he sighed and said, "I'm sorry." Then he took out a bottle of debridement cream and handed it over. Debridement cream can only be applied externally, never take it internally, remember. Zhang Linga took the bottle of debridement cream and asked, "What will happen if you take it internally? Will it be poisonous?" Lu Chuan said, "It's about the same. Just don't eat it by mistake." Zhang Linga stared at the bottle of debridement cream for a while and said perfunctorily, "I know." Lu Chuan hesitated, but still said self-reproachfully, "Linga, I know you are still angry with me. What happened to us in the island country this time was indeed a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you, but these things did happen. For this, I'm willing to make up for it. You can make any request to me, and I will definitely satisfy you." Zhang Linga's eyes suddenly turned red when she heard this, and then she said viciously, "I want you to become a woman." Lu Chuan looked helpless, except for this. Zhang Linga snorted, turned her head to the side, and stared out the window. Lu Chuan felt that he would never be forgiven by Zhang Linga in this life. After all, she liked women, but she was slept with by a man like him twice. No one would accept it. But Zhang Linga suddenly said, "I haven't thought about what to ask of you yet. I'll tell you when I think about it." Lu Chuan's eyes lit up and said, okay, as long as it is a practical request, I will satisfy you." Zhang Linga didn't say anything else. I don't know what she was thinking. The plane arrived at the provincial capital of Jiangbai province. Lu Chuan took Zhang Linga to the supervision department. Zhang Xianyuan was relieved to see his granddaughter come back alive, and then he hurriedly said, "Linga, take out your natal jade and let me see it." Zhang Linga took off the jade hanging around her neck and handed it to Zhang Xianyuan. Lu Chuan curiously leaned over. So many things happened during this period that he forgot that Zhang Linga went to the island country to cross the calamity. Zhang Xianyuan stared at the jade and frowned immediately. He saw that there were still 8 cloud patterns on it, and there was no change. "Strange, you have returned from the island alive, but why hasn't the jade pendant changed at all? Could it be that the 9th catastrophe has not ended yet?" Lu Chuan also looked surprised and said, "Yes, it stands to reason that what we experienced in the island country is enough to be a life and death catastrophe. Why hasn't the jade pendant changed at all? Could it be broken?" Zhang Xianyuan shook his head and said, "This is Linga's natal jade. How could it be broken?" Lu Chuan pondered for a moment, thinking that it was because the Yellow Spring Patriarch was still alive. Although he later broke through to the Golden Core stage, he still didn't dare to go back to the volcano to find trouble with the Yellow Spring Patriarch. Even if the other party was sealed, he was a genuine Yuanying stage powerhouse, and it was not something that the Golden Core stage could easily provoke, so he never thought about having any feud with the Yellow Spring Patriarch again. They were lucky to be able to escape death that day. There are still 8 cloud patterns on Zhang Linga's natal gem. Lu Chuan guessed that Zhang Linga's 9th tribulation would most likely be completed by killing Huangquan Patriarch. He turned his head to look at Zhang Linga and saw that the girl lowered her head, looking lost and distraught. He didn't know what she was thinking, so he secretly decided that when he was strong enough in the future, he would help her kill Huangquan Patriarch, which would be considered as atonement. Zhang Xianyuan did not hesitate anymore. took out a jade box and said, "Whether you survive the 9th catastrophe or not, you have kept your promise to protect Linga and brought her back alive. I will not break my promise. This is the 200-year-old ginseng I promised to give you. Take it." Lu Chuan felt guilty and said, "Zhang Shaosan, why don't you just forget it? Linga is still going through the 9th catastrophe. How can I have the nerve to take such a valuable thing?" Zhang Xianyuan squinted at Lu Chuan and asked, "With your personality, you shouldn't be so polite. Could it be that you did something to let Linga down in the island country, so you don't dare to accept this ginseng?" Lu Chuan's heart skipped a beat, and then he quickly took the ginseng and smiled awkwardly. "How is that possible? Since Zhang Shaosan insisted on giving it to me, I won't be polite." Zhang Xianyuan then dispelled his doubts. Lu Chuan secretly glanced at Zhang Linga and was relieved to see that she didn't expose him. Suddenly, Zhang Linga said, "Grandpa, you go ahead and do your work. We won't bother you." Then she looked at Lu Chuan and said, "Come with me." Lu Chuan didn't know what Zhang Linga wanted to do, but he hurried to follow her. The two left the supervision department and came to a high-end residential area. Zhang Linga took Lu Chuan to a big house, which was bought by Zhang Xianyuan specifically for her. Lu Chuan looked at the environment in the house and asked, "What are you bringing me here for?" Zhang Linga ignored him and went straight into the bedroom. "You wait outside." Lu Chuan had no choice but to obey. In the room, Zhang Linga took out the bottle of debridement cream that Lu Chuan gave her. She found a cup, poured the debridement cream into it, and then rinsed it with water, with a look of determination on her face. "Kingxi, I'm sorry. Not only did I not keep the agreement between us, but I also gave my body to a man, and I was the one who took the initiative the second time. I blame myself and feel conflicted. I don't know how to face my future life. In order to eliminate this conflict, I plan to commit suicide once. This medicine was given to me by Lu Chuan. He said it would be poisonous if taken internally. I don't know how toxic it is, so just treat it as a gamble. If I drink this glass of water and die, it's what I deserve. If I don't die, and that idiot outside can discover my condition in time and save me, then I will start a new life." After making the decision, Zhang Linga picked up the glass of water and drank it all. Chapter 237 Love Poison is also poison. In the living room, Lu Chuan sat on the sofa, looking at this luxurious flat, thinking that it was good to be born in a powerful family. You don't have to worry about anything when you are born, unlike himself, who needs to work hard for everything. I don't know what this girl wants to do by calling me here, but she said on the plane that she would make a request to me. Logically speaking, she has forgiven me in disguise, so nothing should happen again, right? Thinking of this, he began to think about his next plan. Now he has successfully broken through to the Giant stage, which is considered to be among the strong. But he knows very well that his current strength is far from enough, whether it is to seek revenge on the elder or to help his sister-in-law separate the embroiderer's nascent soul. Especially this trip to the island country let Lu Chuan know that there are still powerful people in the nascent soul stage on the earth, which undoubtedly deepened Lu Chuan's sense of crisis. Although Huangquan Patriarch is sealed, as long as he does not take the initiative to die, nothing will happen. But who can guarantee that there are no unsealed nascent souls on the earth? In addition, the sudden appearance of the law enforcer also made Lu Chuan feel a lot of pressure. So the strength of just entering the Giant stage is far from enough for Lu Chuan. However, he has just broken through, and there is no way to improve his realm in a short period of time. So next, he can first think of a way to give himself more means of self-protection. This time I got a ray of Zhuanhuang Qi from the island country, which can be used to cultivate the Zhuanhuang immortal body and let my body break free from the limitations of the mortal body. The so-called Zhuanhuang immortal body is one of the 10 great divine bodies in the cultivation world. Once cultivated, it can achieve the effect of immortality and eternal existence. At that time, even if the sky collapses and the world collapses, the Zhuanhuang immortal body can still exist forever between heaven and earth without damage. However, to cultivate the Zhuanhuang immortal body, not only does it require extraordinary talent and a strong fate to bear the status of the divine body, but it also requires the help of Zhuanhuang Qi to practice. Zhuanhuang Qi is rare, and once it comes out, it will definitely cause bloody storms. So from ancient times to the present, no one has ever cultivated the Zhuanghuang immortal body. However, in the current Dharma ending age, the number of practitioners is declining. Even if the Zhuanghuang key is born, few people know its value. This is an opportunity for Lu Chuan. This time, he was lucky to get a ray of Zhuanghuang key in the island country, which is proof. As one of the 10 divine bodies, the Zhuanghuang immortal body can definitely become a powerful body that can run rampant between heaven and earth, even if only 1/10 of the practice is successful. At that time, I will not only be invulnerable to swords and guns, and ignore any attack, but also have the power to destroy the world at will. At that time, my body will be the strongest weapon in this world. Thinking of this, Lu Chuan became more and more excited and determined to practice the Zhuanghuang immortal body. Now that the Zhuanghuang key is available, he only needs to find some auxiliary materials to start practicing. In the bedroom, after Zhang Linga drank the glass of water, she began to wait for the poison to take effect and die. She called Lu Chuan over. In fact, she was also betting whether this guy would find the problem in time after she was poisoned and save herself. She would not take the initiative to ask Lu Chuan for help. It depends on when Lu Chuan can realize that something is wrong. If it is discovered in time, it means that it is God's will. If it is not discovered, this guy will be able to collect his body at that time. However, not long after drinking the glass of water, Zhang Linga noticed something wrong. She felt her body began to heat up, as if there was a ball of fire in her lower abdomen, which gave rise to the desire in her heart, making her feel hot and thirsty, and wanting to take off her clothes. Soon, her face became flushed, her eyes were blurred, and her whole body was limp and powerless. No. Didn't they say that taking it internally would cause poisoning? But how could I become like this? Soon, she felt that she was a little bit unable to bear it. She had no choice but to grit her teeth and weakly shouted, Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan, who was thinking about the practice of Zhuanghuang immortal body in the living room, vaguely heard someone calling his name. Although the voice was very weak, as a practitioner, his hearing was far superior to that of ordinary people, and he immediately confirmed that it was Zhang Linga calling him in the room. He immediately stood up and walked towards Zhang Linga's bedroom, then knocked on the door. Linga, are you calling me? Come in, come in. Zhang Linga's voice sounded. Lu Chuan pushed the door open and walked in. When he saw Zhang Linga lying on the bed in a seductive manner, his eyes widened, and he quickly asked, Linga, what's wrong with you? Zhang Linga looked at Lu Chuan resentfully and said, didn't you say that this medicine would be poisonous if taken orally? But why did I become like this? You liar. Lu Chuan turned his head and glanced at the opened debridement ointment and the cup of water with a little bit of liquid left on the table, and immediately understood what was going on. He quickly walked to the bed and said, I didn't lie to you. Love poison is also poison. The key is that you clearly knew it was poisonous. Why did you drink it with water? Zhang Linga's eyes widened. She never expected that the poison Lu Chuan was talking about was actually love poison. She was embarrassed and angry. She looked at Lu Chuan angrily and said, is it not okay for me to commit suicide? Who knew that you, a guy, would be so dishonest even with the medicine used to treat trauma? I'm going to be mad at you. Lu Chuan's heart skipped a beat. He didn't expect Zhang Linga to actually want to commit suicide. When this girl said she would make a request to him today, he thought everything was fine, but he didn't expect that she would want to commit suicide the next time. Fortunately, the debridement ointment only has a certain aphrodisiac effect. If it was replaced with something else, the consequences would be disastrous. The more Lu Chuan thought about it, the more he blamed himself. Then he quickly said to Zhang Linga, it's all my fault, it's all my fault. Don't be afraid. I will help you detoxify. It's not that serious to accidentally eat the debridement ointment. Then he was about to pick up Zhang Linga and quickly went to the bathroom to take a cold shower. Zhang Linga looked at Lu Chuan angrily and aggrievedly, like a resentful young wife. Seeing Lu Chuan reaching out his hand, she grabbed it, opened her mouth and bit it. Lu Chuan felt pain, but he didn't hide. He just silently injured Zhang Linga's venting. Zhang Linga bit for a while, then let go and asked, you are so powerful, you can obviously dodge. Why don't you dodge? Lu Chuan smiled and said, how can I vent my anger if I dodge you? Now that you have bitten me, Can you go to the bathroom with me to take a cold shower to detoxify? Zhang Ling snorted and said nothing. Lu Chuan directly carried her down from the bed and went into the bathroom. Turning on the shower, the cold water poured on her body. Zhang Ling immediately felt that the hot feeling on her body was much relieved. Lu Chuan looked at Zhang Ling's clothes being wet and becoming somewhat transparent and said, "You take a shower here for a while. The feeling should subside soon. I'll go out first." After saying that, he turned around and was about to leave. Zhang Ling suddenly grabbed his hand. He turned around in confusion, wanting to ask if there was anything else. But he saw Zhang Ling directly approached, hugged Lu Chuan's neck, and kissed him. Chapter 238 Incident at the Martial Arts Association. 3 hours later, Lu Chuan carried Zhang Ling out of the bathroom and put her on the bed. He looked at this willful girl helplessly and asked, "Will you tease me on purpose in the future?" Zhang Ling became as well behaved as a little white rabbit and shook her head quickly. Lu Chuan then asked, "Do you want to commit suicide in the future?" Zhang Ling shook her head again. Lu Chuan asked again, "These 3 times were not what I wanted. Do you still blame me?" Zhang Ling shook her head quickly. "I don't blame you. It's all I got into trouble myself." Lu Chuan nodded with satisfaction and said, "In that case, you are not allowed to worry about these things in the future, and you are not allowed to trouble me again. Do you hear me?" Zhang Ling nodded. Ling knows. "Okay, if you encounter any trouble in the future, you can contact me at any time. I'm leaving first." Lu Chuan didn't stay any longer and turned around and left here. Zhang Ling lay down on the bed with a sense of relief. After staring at the ceiling for a while, she laughed out loud, as if she thought of something happy. She did not notice that the jade pendant under her clothes emitted a faint light again. Lu Chuan returned to Yancheng. Seeing that Mu Nanking was in a stable state and Xiu Niang showed no signs of waking up, he was relieved. He told Liang Gongyi that Kitahara Sasuke had died and told Liang Gongyi that he could return to the island country to reunite with his family. Liang Gongyi was moved to tears and knelt down to kowtow 3 times to Lu Chuan to express his gratitude. But what Lu Chuan did not expect was that this girl decided to stay in Yancheng to take care of Mu Nanking and not return to the island country. She wanted to repay Lu Chuan in this way. Lu Chuan did not say much and agreed to Liang Gongyi's decision. The clinic was operating as usual and there was no change. However, Su Ming made rapid progress with Lu Chuan's guidance and had already broken through to the 8th level of the transformation realm. He was only 1 step away from reaching the 9th level of the transformation realm. Seeing that there was no problem in the clinic, Lu Chuan put all his thoughts on cultivating the Xuanhuang immortal body. It's not that he didn't want Mu Nanking to wake up earlier, but he had just broken through to the Jinden stage, and it was not enough to perform the method of separating the embroiderer's nascent soul. This matter must be done at least after the 5th or 6th Jinden. Another thing is that Lu Chuan couldn't make up his mind to use the power of Lan Guiyang to suppress the embroiderer's nascent soul, so this matter must be carefully considered. With the convenience of the medical clinic, Lu Chuan quickly collected the auxiliary materials needed to practice the Xuanhuang immortal body. In addition to the 200-year-old ginseng that was originally intended to be used to separate the embroiderer's nascent soul and the ancient jade obtained from the island country, Lu Chuan wanted to refine the Xuanhuang immortal body, and there was only one thing missing: the shell of a 1,000-year-old turtle. Turtle shells are not uncommon, but the shell of a 1,000-year-old turtle is very rare. Lu Chuan asked throughout Yancheng, but he didn't find such a long-year-old turtle shell. But soon he remembered that when he was looking at the account book of the Jiangbi Province Martial Arts Association, he saw a record on it that there was a 1,000-year-old turtle shell stored in the warehouse. It seems that having multiple identities is not necessarily a bad thing. Lu Chuan did not hesitate and ran back to the provincial capital, intending to find Zhao Beicheng to ask for the 1,000-year-old tortoise shell. He came to the Jiangbi Provincial Martial Arts Association happily, but as soon as he stepped into the door, he felt a dead atmosphere. The apprentices inside were all dejected. Many of them had injuries on their faces, and some even hid in the corner to wipe their tears. Lu Chuan frowned and hurried to Zhao Beicheng's office. Zhao Beicheng was sorting out the materials with a tired look, and there were still many scars on his face. When he saw Lu Chuan coming, his eyes were obviously bright, but soon dimmed. "President Lu, you are back." Lu Chuan asked, "What happened in the association when I was away? What happened to the injury on your face?" Zhao Beicheng sighed and told the story again. It turned out that during the time when Lu Chuan went to the island country, people from the neighboring Xianan Provincial Martial Arts Association came to Jiangbi for martial arts exchange. The so-called martial arts exchange is actually a challenge. The development of martial arts in Jiangbi province is at a disadvantage, and the martial arts resources allocated to it every year are pitifully few, so that the apprentices trained by the Martial Arts Association are much weaker than those in other provinces. Moreover, the Jiangbi Provincial Martial Arts Association is the only one among all martial arts associations that does not have a master of the Zhuan realm. For this reason, the Jiangbi Provincial Martial Arts Association is often bullied by martial arts associations in surrounding provinces. The Xianan Provincial Martial Arts Association is one of them. This time, Zhao Shoren, the president of the Xianan Provincial Martial Arts Association, brought their most talented apprentices to challenge the hall and beat the apprentices of the Jiangbi Provincial Martial Arts Association to pieces and completely defeated the little confidence they had just built up because of the prescription left by Lu Chuan. Not only that, Zhao Shoren also asked his son Zhao Tai, who had reached the 9th level of the transformation realm, to challenge the top leaders of the Jiangbi Provincial Martial Arts Association. Without Lu Chuan, the strongest person in the Jiangbi Provincial Martial Arts Association was Zhao Beicheng, an 8th level master of the transformation realm. Out of desperation, Zhao Beicheng could only bite the bullet and go to the ring, and the result was naturally that he was beaten to a pulp. Zhao Beicheng accepted all these. After all, he was indeed weak and deserved to be beaten. But what he didn't expect was that after he lost, Zhao Shoren insisted that he agreed to use the resources of the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association as a bet and asked to go to the warehouse to move things. Zhao Beicheng never agreed to such a bet. Zhao Shoren and Zhao Tai both believed that Zhao Beicheng agreed and said that the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association couldn't afford to lose. Then they asked the people of the Xianan Martial Arts Association to force their way into the warehouse to move things. Zhao Beicheng wanted to stop him, but unfortunately he was slapped away by Zhao Shoren. Naturally, others didn't dare to step forward. The warehouse of the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association was looted by Zhao Shoren. Before leaving, he said with disdain that it would be a waste to keep these resources in Jiangbi, and that the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association had long ceased to exist. After listening to Zhao Beicheng's story, Lu Chuan became angry and said, "What's the difference between what they are doing and robbing openly?" Zhao Beicheng sighed and said, "The strong prey on the weak, and it has been like this since ancient times." Suddenly, Lu Chuan reacted and asked quickly, "Did they also take away the 1,000-year-old tortoise shell in the warehouse?" Zhao Beicheng said, "There is not even a hair left in the warehouse, let alone the tortoise shell." Lu Chuan cursed secretly and had the urge to strangle Zhao Shoren to death. After a moment of hesitation, he made a decision and said, "I will go to Xianan province and take back what belongs to us." Zhao Beicheng's face changed, but before he spoke, a sarcastic voice sounded outside the door. "President Lu, you are indeed talented, but Zhao Shoren is a master of the Zhuan realm. You went to Xianan just to make everyone laugh at our Jiangbi." Lu Chuan and Zhao Beicheng turned their heads and saw a group of senior executives of the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association walked in. They all took envelopes and put them on the desk one after another. "This is our resignation letter. We quit." Chapter 239 Heading to Xianan City. Zhao Beicheng's face changed. "You." All the senior executives sighed helplessly. The leader said, "Zhao Shoren is bullying us because we don't have a Zhuanjing in Jiangbi, but this is a fact. There will be more and more such things in the future. We are really powerless." Lu Chuan said, "Who said that there is no Zhuanjing in Jiangbi?" Everyone turned their heads to look at Lu Chuan. The person who spoke at that time smiled helplessly and said, "President Lu, you are young and talented. One day you can really reach the Zhuanjing, but that will be many years later. Before that, the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association may have been disbanded long ago. We really can't afford it." Lu Chuan didn't waste any words. He directly released the momentum of the first transformation of the golden elixir and said, "What if I have reached the Xuanjing?" Everyone was shocked and showed an expression of disbelief on their faces. Xuanjing in his 20s. How is this possible? The person who spoke at that time showed an expression of doubting life. Lu Chuan took the resignation letter from the table, tore it into pieces, and said, "Although I became the president by mistake, now that I'm in this position, I will shoulder this responsibility. In the past, we had few resources and a poor foundation, so we were bullied. But that won't happen in the future. As long as I'm still in this association, I will never allow anyone to bully us, and I will definitely change the status quo, make the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association bigger and stronger, and let other martial arts associations take notice of us." Then he took out a few bottles of Puan Dan from the Demon Suppression Tower. This is Puan pill, which has many benefits for the body. You should give one to each apprentice as a consolation for being bullied this time. The rest you can divide among yourselves. Zhao Beicheng was stunned. He quickly took a bottle, opened it and smelled it, and said, "Is this Puan pill? The Puan pill that costs 500,000 yuan?" Lu Chuan was a little surprised. "Do you know this pill?" Zhao Beicheng said, "Of course I know. Who in the martial arts world doesn't know the existence of this pill now? This is the magic pill in the minds of martial artists. I want to buy it, but can't afford it." Lu Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought Zhao Beicheng wanted to buy it but couldn't. It seems that, when Zhu Chenggen was the president, he really squeezed the people below too hard. To be honest, this pill was made by me. As long as you work hard, you can have as many Puan pills and Yankee pills as you want in the future. Lu Chuan said with a proud face. Zhao Beicheng and other senior executives were all moved. Those who were thinking about resigning just now immediately gave up the idea. After all, Lu Chuan took out several bottles of pills worth 500,000 yuan each at once. Who would be willing to leave such a good president? After stabilizing the morale of the troops, Lu Chuan said, "Okay, I will go to Xianan province and take back what belongs to us." On the high-speed train to Xianan City, the provincial capital of Xianan province, Lu Chuan received a call from Hiruko Kishimoto. "Lu Chuan, my grandfather and I are back. Grandpa wants to thank you for your help to us in the island country and plans to take me to Jiangbi to find you. Is it convenient?" Lu Chuan said, "Hiruko, I'm so sorry. I've already taken the high-speed train to Xianan City. I can only entertain you later." Kishimoto Hiruko quickly said, "My grandfather and I live in Xianan City. Our company's headquarters is also here. What are you doing in Xianan?" Lu Chuan was a little surprised and said, "Yes, I have to deal with some things. This is a bit of a coincidence." Kishimoto Hiruko laughed and said, "This shows that there is a fate between us. Since you are coming to Xianan, why don't you let me and Grandpa entertain you well and help you solve the problem by the way? How about it?" Lu Chuan thought about it and said, "You can't help me with my affairs, but I can find you after I finish my business." Kishimoto Hiruko didn't say anything nonsense and said happily, "Then I'll wait for your call." "Well," Lu Chuan said and hung up the phone. An hour later, the high-speed rail arrived at Xianan City, and Lu Chuan took a taxi to the Xianan Province Martial Arts Association. Looking at the mansion, that was obviously much more imposing than the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association, Lu Chuan felt a little emotional. The Jiangbi Martial Arts Association was indeed a bit too shabby. He walked in directly, and then said loudly, "Zhao Shoren, get out." Many people in the Martial Arts Association heard this shout, and ran out immediately. Who is this guy? He dared to ask our president to get out. Doesn't he want to live? It must be some blind guy. It's really amazing that he found the Martial Arts Association to cause trouble. Soon, a rough middle-aged man came out with a young man. It was Zhao Shuren and Zhao Tei, father and son. Zhao Shuren stared at Lu Chuan and asked, "Boy, I don't know you. What do you want to do in our martial arts association?" Lu Chuan snorted coldly and said, "My name is Lu Chuan, and I'm the president of the Jiangbi Province Martial Arts Association." Zhao Shuren was stunned for a moment, then laughed and said, "Are you Lu Chuan? The coward who was hiding and didn't dare to come out when we went to find you to spar?" Lu Chuan curled his lips and said, "I just went out for something. Otherwise, do you think you can bully the people in our Jiangbi Martial Arts Association?" Zhao Shuren couldn't help laughing, and the apprentices who ran out to watch the excitement in the yard also laughed. So what are you doing here now? Don't tell me that you are here to avenge the people in your association. Lu Chuan nodded. Yes, I want to seek justice for the people in our association. And by the way, take back the things you stole from us. Zhao Shuren laughed and said, boy, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. What we took from your association are the spoils of our victory in the competition. There is no such thing as robbery. Lu Chuan said with a cold face. Really? Then I'm here to take the spoils that belong to me too. Zhao Shuren's face sank. It seems that you really don't know how to live or die. Do you really think that you, a guy in his 20s, who has no idea what kind of shit luck it is to sit on the position of president of the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association, can be my opponent? At this time, Zhao Te rushed directly towards Lu Chuan. Father, it is enough for me to deal with this kind of garbage. There is no need to waste time talking to him. He looked at the apprentices who were watching and said, take out your phones and record the next scene. I want to let the whole martial arts world know how rubbish the president of the Jiangbi Martial Arts Association is. Upon hearing this, the apprentices took out their phones with anticipation. Zhao Te came in front of Lu Chuan, a sneer on his face, and cursed, boy, wait for me to kneel down and beg for mercy. Lu Chuan shook his head helplessly, and the moment Zhao Te rushed in front of him, he released the pressure of the Jiandan period and fixed his body. Then he slapped him several times quickly and kicked him in the crotch. Zhao Te instantly clamped his legs together, and with a plop, he knelt in front of Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan looked at Zhao Shuren and asked, can I be your opponent? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 240 Heavenly Martial Arts. Zhao Shuren was expecting to see Lu Chuan make a fool of himself, but when he saw Zhao Te, who was at the 9th level of the transformation realm, had no power to fight back in front of Lu Chuan, his expression suddenly changed. He felt the momentum of Lu Chuan and exclaimed, you are at the mysterious realm. Lu Chuan said calmly, why, is it not possible? Zhao Shuren's expression became more serious, and he said to Zhao Te, son, you get out of the way first, you are no match for him. Zhao Te quickly ran away with his legs tucked together. Zhao Shuren walked a few steps towards Lu Chuan and said coldly, no wonder you dare to run to our Xianan to make trouble. It turns out that you have something to rely on. Your Jiangbi martial arts have always been at the bottom of the list among all provinces. Now that you can produce a mysterious realm in your 20s, it seems that God has opened his eyes. But you have to know that there is a difference between the mysterious realm and the mysterious realm. It is not that you are qualified to shout at me just because you step into this realm. Next, I will let you know how much you are worth. As soon as the voice fell, he stretched out his hand towards Lu Chuan and made a gesture of pinching someone. An invisible force appeared and wrapped around Lu Chuan's neck. Lu Chuan immediately released his spiritual power and formed a barrier in front of him. The force hit the barrier and exploded instantly. The scattered power fluctuations directly overturned the apprentices who were watching the excitement around him. Lu Chuan used his spiritual power and turned it into beams of power to attack Zhao Shuren. Zhao Shuren was startled and hurriedly dodged. Although he had entered the Zuan realm for many years, he had always been stuck at the first level of the Zuan realm. Originally, he thought that, even if Lu Chuan had reached the Zuan realm, he must have just entered this level. Relying on his years of accumulation, he was at least better than Lu Chuan in terms of strength. But based on Lu Chuan's move just now, he felt that Lu Chuan's strength was not only stronger than his own, but also the quality of his strength was far superior to his own internal strength. Although he could feel that the other party's realm was not much different from his own, Lu Chuan had completely crushed him with his strength alone. The two fought for dozens of moves. Seeing that he could not get any advantage from Lu Chuan, Zhao Shuren could only grit his teeth and said, boy, your strength is beyond my expectation, but you are so young, you can never compare with me in terms of foundation. Next, I will use the ground level martial arts that I got with great difficulty. I don't believe you can resist it. After reaching the Zuan realm, the realm alone is no longer the standard for measuring a strong man. Because at this stage, martial arts will undergo earth-shaking changes, and the power that can be exerted is far beyond what can be compared to the time below the Zuan realm. These powerful martial arts are divided into 4 levels: Xiandi Zuan Huang. The Huang level is the lowest, but its power is still 10 times or 100 times stronger than ordinary martial arts. Zhao Shuren had to fight for his life to get a low-grade martial art of the earth level, and it was still an incomplete method with only 2 moves. But this was enough for him to look down on the entire Xianan and become the president of the Xianan Province Martial Arts Association. Lu Chuan felt the change in Zhao Shuren's aura and suddenly became alert. Earth-level martial arts? It sounds very powerful. It seems that I have to use some tricks. He immediately began to seal with both hands, and the spiritual power in his body continued to surge out. Zhao Shuren's ki was flying around him, and then he clenched his fist and smashed towards Lu Chuan. Boy, die. Taste the power of my Xian long fist. A huge fist shadow appeared, covering the sky and the sun, and smashed towards Lu Chuan fiercely. Seeing this, Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes and completed the seals with his hands. Then he shouted loudly, and a powerful seal appeared, colliding with the fist shadow. Heaven-turning seal. This was what Lu Chuan learned from the inherited memory when he returned to Yancheng. Among the combat skills of practitioners, it is considered to be quite powerful. The two collided, and the huge power fluctuation spread out, directly blowing off the roof of the house closest to here. Then the fist shadow was completely crushed and shattered. The heaven-turning seal hit Zhao Shuren directly. Zhao Shuren's face changed drastically. He wanted to escape, but unfortunately he had no chance. Dust was raised on the ground, and the apprentices of the Xianan Martial Arts Association were so scared that they had already hidden. Dat. Zhao Te was the first to react and rushed into the dust. Soon, the dust dispersed, and everyone saw a terrifying pit where Zhao Te was, and Zhao Te squatted in the pit and helped Zhao Shuren, who was already covered in wounds and vomiting blood. Zhao Shuren's eyes were full of fear, and he kept muttering, "Heaven-grade martial arts. It's a heaven-grade martial arts. He actually has a heaven-grade martial arts." Lu Chuan walked to the front of the big pit, stared at Zhao Shuren, and asked, "Heaven-grade martial arts? Can martial arts of this power be classified as heaven grade?" Zhao Shuren looked at Lu Chuan with jealousy and said, "Don't play dumb with me here. Heaven grade martial arts are rare in the world. Those sects that have been passed down for many years may not be able to possess them. You talk like you have a lot of martial arts of this level. Do you think I will believe it?" Lu Chuan laughed dumbly. The power of the heaven flipping seal is indeed extraordinary, but it is only a relatively common fighting skill in the cultivation world. He does have many such fighting skills. But he did not argue with Zhao Shuren, and asked, "You have already lost to me. I'm going to your warehouse to get the spoils now. You should have no objection, right?" Zhao Te immediately said, "Before you fought with my father, he never said that you could get the spoils if you won. If you dare to take it, it would be robbery. As the president of Jiangbai Martial Arts Association, do you have the nerve to do that?" Lu Chuan sneered and said, "Why didn't you feel embarrassed when you robbed my Jiangbai Martial Arts Association's things? Now that our roles have been reversed, you are condemning me?" Zhao Te was speechless, gritted his teeth, and looked at Lu Chuan and said, "My father lost to you, but your victory was not glorious at all. If my father also has heaven-level martial arts, you will definitely not be able to win. If you have the ability, you can teach your heaven-level martial arts to my father, and then you two can fight again. If you can still win, I will agree to let you go to our warehouse to get the spoils." Lu Chuan was speechless, thinking that your train of thought is really strange. If your father doesn't have heaven-level martial arts, I have to teach him? Am I doing charity? Even Zhao Shuren couldn't help but look at his son and showed him an admiring look. "Forget it, there's no need for me to ask you. I'll just go get it." Lu Chuan didn't waste any more time. He scanned the entire association with his spiritual sense and walked towards the warehouse. Zhao Te wanted to stop him immediately, but Zhao Shuren stopped him. "Let him go. He is strong. If we don't let him take it, the consequences will be more serious." Zayote frowned and said, but the warehouse is full of precious resources of our association. Zayoshuren sneered and said, so what? Although this guy's powerful, his brain is not working well. He came to challenge the club, but he came alone. Now he goes to take the spoils. Even if he lets him take it freely, how much can he take? Chapter 241. It's not suitable to stay here for long. When Zayote heard what Zayoshuren said, he immediately felt that it made sense and said, yes, he has 2 hands. Let him take whatever he wants, and he can't take much away. Then he laughed, looked at Zayoshuren and said, Dad, you are smart. You brought so many apprentices over and directly emptied the warehouse of Jiangbai Martial Arts Association. Even if this kid takes some things, we will definitely not lose anything. Zayoshuren nodded, gritted his teeth, and stood up from the ground, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said, he is just a young boy in his 20s. How much experience can he have? The old ones have to be the best. On the other side, Lu Chuan came to the warehouse of Xianan Martial Arts Association. Seeing the dazzling array of medicinal materials, rare materials, elixirs, gems and other items inside, Lu Chuan's eyes suddenly lit up. The resources here are simply 7 or 8 times that of Jiangbai Martial Arts Association. Compared with Xianan, we are really poor there. He scanned the whole place and soon found the 1000-year-old tortoise shell, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Now I have all the materials for cultivating the Zuanhuang immortal body. I don't have to bother looking for them anymore. Zayoshuren emptied my Jiangbai warehouse. I'll use his own method to retaliate and empty the warehouse as well. Thinking of this, Lu Chuan reached out to the items in the warehouse and put them all into the demon suppression tower in an instant. Although the storage space of the demon suppression tower is not unlimited, it is more than enough to hold the things in the warehouse. Not long after, Lu Chuan put all the things in the warehouse into the demon suppression tower. With so many resources, we can also use them as capital for the rise of my Jiangbai Martial Arts Association. He glanced at the empty warehouse and turned away. Zayote saw Lu Chuan coming out of the warehouse and said, Dad, that kid is out. Zayoshuren looked towards Lu Chuan with a puzzled look on his face. Strange. Why did he come out without taking anything? Zayote also felt a little strange and said, could it be that the things in our warehouse are too heavy and this kid finds it troublesome to carry them, so he gave up? Zayoshuren said, do you think he is a fool? Zayote shook his head and said, he doesn't look like that. At this time, Lu Chuan passed by the father and son, bowed to Zayoshuren, and said, President Zao, thank you for the gift. I'll take my leave first. Then he left the Xianan Martial Arts Association. Zayoshuren was confused and said, could it be that this guy was just joking? Zayote suddenly said, I know. Zayoshuren turned his head and looked at him and asked, what do you know? Zayote said, although this guy's powerful, even you, Dad, are not his opponent, but we have a background. This guy must have suddenly learned about our background, so he was scared and didn't dare to take it. That's why he became so polite when he left. Zayoshuren wanted to scold Zayote for being stupid, but then he thought about it and felt that it was not impossible. After all, Lu Chuan left without taking anything, which was really abnormal. No matter what the reason is, it's a good thing for us that he didn't take anything. Let's go to the warehouse first. Maybe this kid put those small things in his pocket. The two walked towards the warehouse together. Zayote smiled and said, don't worry, Dad, I saw it clearly just now. There is no bulge on that guy. He definitely didn't take anything. Then he opened the door of the warehouse. A lonely wind blew. When they saw that the entire warehouse was empty, the father and son were stunned at the same time. Then Zayoshuren's shrill screams broke through the sky, scaring away the sparrows perched on the wall. How is this possible? How did he do it? These are the resources I have saved for 10 years. Outside the Xianan Martial Arts Association, Lu Chuan had already taken a taxi. As soon as he got in the car, he heard Zayoshuren's desperate cry. He quickly closed the door and said to the driver, Master, go to Xianan Hotel. It is not advisable to stay here for long. Let's go. He had just called Haruko Kishimoto and said that his affairs had been dealt with. Haruko Kishimoto said that she would arrange a dinner at Xianan Hotel to receive Lu Chuan, and she also planned to send someone to pick him up. Luchuan refused and said that he could just take a taxi. Not long after, the taxi stopped in front of Cheyenne Hotel. Luchuan got out of the car and saw that there were already 2 rows of waiters standing at the door of the hotel. As soon as he walked over, the 2 rows of waiters bowed and shouted, "Welcome Mr. Lu." Luchuan was embarrassed, thinking that he was just here for a meal, and this row was really a bit too big. Soon, he saw the figure of Haruko Kishimoto. "Luchuan." Haruko Kishimoto came to Luchuan with a smile. Luchuan said, "Isn't it just a dinner? Why do you have to arrange people to welcome you?" Haruko Kishimoto smiled and said, "Grandpa said that you are our benefactor, so he must invite you to dinner in a grand manner. For this reason, he specially booked the entire Cheyenne Hotel." Luchuan's eyes widened, and he looked up at this magnificent 5-star hotel. He thought that your grandfather is really rich and powerful. Just for a meal, he booked the entire hotel. It was really a bit too extravagant. "Let's go in quickly, Grandpa is still waiting." Haruko Kishimoto's eyes curved into crescents. Luchuan nodded, followed her into the hotel, and came to a magnificent private room. The huge round table was already filled with delicious food. Naoki Kishimoto was standing in the private room. When he saw Luchuan coming, he hurried over to greet him. "Luchuan, please sit down. You are my great benefactor. If it weren't for you, I would have died twice, so I must treat you well today." Luchuan smiled and said, "Mr. Kishimoto, you are too polite." For some reason, his spiritual intuition, which was different from that of ordinary people, detected a trace of abnormality in Naoki Kishimoto. He always felt that the Naoki Kishimoto in front of him was a little different from the past, but he couldn't tell where the difference was. The 3 of them sat down, and Naoki Kishimoto poured wine for Luchuan, and said with a smile, "Luchuan, we must not leave until we are drunk today." Luchuan smiled and said, "Since Mr. Kishimoto has spoken, I will accompany you to the end." The 3 chatted and drank. Naoki Kishimoto kept toasting Luchuan, as if he was afraid that he would not get drunk. Haruko Kishimoto also drank a glass from time to time, and soon her pretty face had turned red. After 3 rounds of drinking, Luchuan felt a little drunk, so he told Naoki Kishimoto that he couldn't go on and had to find a place to sleep. Naoki Kishimoto immediately said that the hotel's presidential suite was ready, and then helped Luchuan to the presidential suite. After settling Luchuan down, Naoki Kishimoto came out and called Haruko Kishimoto to a hidden room and said earnestly, "Haruko, are you willing to sacrifice yourself for the family?" Haruko Kishimoto said, "Grandpa, what are you talking about? Everything I have was given by my family, so I'm naturally willing to make sacrifices." Naoki Kishimoto nodded and said, "Very good, I have a task for you now." Haruko Kishimoto asked curiously, "What task?" Naoki Kishimoto said, "I want you to seduce Luchuan." Chapter 242 Controlling Luchuan. Haruko Kishimoto was stunned for a moment, then a look of deep surprise appeared on her face, and she thought she had heard it wrong. What? Naoki Kishimoto said seriously, "Luchuan is powerful, talented, and so young. His future achievements are limitless. If such a person can serve our family, it will bring us endless benefits." Then he took out a pill and said, "This pill is called the love pill. If you eat it, your body will have a kind of magic power. From now on, anyone who has a relationship with you will be controlled by you and become your slave. And the first person you want to control is Luchuan. Originally, I was thinking of drugging him and letting you have a relationship with him, but he is strong and may notice it, so I tried to make him drunk, and then you take the initiative to seduce him. Later, you can use the excuse of going to see him for medical treatment, and then take the opportunity to take him down. You are outstanding in appearance and have a first-class figure. Once you take the initiative, no man can resist. Whether Luchuan can be used by us depends on your performance." Haruko Kishimoto looked at her grandfather in amazement. She had never thought that her grandfather would think of using such a sinister method to control others. This was completely different from the Naoki Kishimoto she knew. "Grandpa, how could you become like this? Didn't you always teach me that people should have their own bottom line and not do whatever it takes? But how could you come up with such a despicable method?" Naoki Kishimoto coughed twice and said, "Luchuan is really too good. If we don't use some tricks, we can't make him work for us. Okay, you should eat this love pill quickly, and then seduce Luchuan, and make him your slave. Haruko Kishimoto directly refused. Grandpa, I'm willing to dedicate myself to the family, but if you use such despicable means to control others, I'm sorry I can't agree. Naoki Kishimoto sighed and said, you are really disobedient. Haruko Kishimoto said angrily, it's not that I don't listen, it's just that your method is too despicable. Okay, you don't have to condemn me here. Naoki Kishimoto said impatiently, and then stretched out his hand and tapped the center of Haruko Kishimoto's eyebrows. Haruko Kishimoto was stunned for a moment, and then a purple light flashed in her eyes, and soon returned to normal. Then she became very obedient, no longer having the serious resistance she had just now. Naoki Kishimoto asked, can we seduce Luchuan now? Haruko Kishimoto nodded and said, Haruko is willing to follow all arrangements made by Grandpa. Naoki Kishimoto handed over the love pill and said, then take this pill quickly and go over. Haruko Kishimoto took the pill and ate it, then turned and left the room. Naoki Kishimoto looked at Haruko Kishimoto's graceful back, with a hint of covetousness in his eyes. If it weren't for you to control Luchuan, I would definitely taste your body first. At this time, Naoki Kishimoto had already fallen into a deep sleep, and the one who really controlled this body was the soul of the Huanquan patriarch. When Luchuan was treating Naoki Kishimoto, this soul quietly lurked over and controlled Naoki Kishimoto's mind. After leaving the Sakura kingdom, the Naoki Kishimoto that Luchuan saw was actually controlled by the Huanquan patriarch. The reason why Naoki Kishimoto didn't go back to China with Luchuan was because he had to go to the volcanic cave to find Huanquan patriarch to get the love pill. Huanquan patriarch was sealed, and the power of that ray of soul was not enough to compete with Luchuan, so he came up with this method to control Luchuan. At that time, he thought that he could make Kishimoto Haruko seduce Luchuan by deceiving her, so that he could save some energy, but he had no choice but to separate a ray of soul power to control Kishimoto Haruko. As long as Kishimoto Haruko controls Luchuan, it is equivalent to controlling Luchuan himself. At that time, he can let Luchuan take the initiative to go to the island country, go to the volcanic cave, and take over his body. When he goes, he will also capture Zanlinger. In this way, he can not only get a top level body, but also break the seal and get rid of the shackles. Luchuan, you probably never dreamed that I still have such a backup plan, right? Don't worry, after you are possessed by me, I will definitely use this body to take down the beautiful girls around you one by one, so that I won't treat you unfairly. Naoki Kishimoto's expression gradually became sinister. Haruko Kishimoto came to Luchuan's door, unbuttoned a few buttons of her shirt, and then knocked on the door. After a while, Luchuan, who was full of alcohol, opened the door and asked in confusion, Haruko, it's so late, you haven't drunk yesterday, why don't you rest early, is there something wrong? Haruko Kishimoto's face was ruddy, and she said shyly, Luchuan, you are a good doctor, and it happens that I feel a little uncomfortable these 2 days. Can you help me? Luchuan thought for a while and said, okay, come in and talk. Haruko Kishimoto was full of gratitude and said, Luchuan, you are so nice. Then she was about to enter Luchuan's room. Suddenly, she lost her balance, leaned forward, and fell directly into Luchuan's arms. Luchuan quickly supported her and said, it seems that you have really drunk too much. You can't even walk steadily. Kishimoto Haruko looked up at Luchuan, her eyes full of love, her face blushing, and said, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't drink too much, but my legs are a little weak. Luchuan was attracted by her appearance and didn't dare to look at her for too long. He quickly helped her into the room and let her sit on the sofa. What's wrong with you? Kishimoto Haruko was shy and said, I'm embarrassed to say it. How about you sit closer? It would be bad if others hear it. Luchuan thought to himself that there were only the two of us here, who else could hear it? However, considering that the other party might really have some kind of private problem, he couldn't say it out loud, so he sat next to Kishimoto Haruko. Haruko Kishimoto leaned close to Luchuan's ear and whispered, I just always feel my chest is a little swollen and a little suffocated recently. How can I treat it? Luchuan was already a little drunk. Haruko Kishimoto suddenly got so close to him. He smelled the feminine scent on the other person and felt a hot temperature on the other person. He suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. He coughed twice and said, "You may not eat right," which leads to the obstruction of meridians. In this case, just dredge them. Haruko Kishimoto blinked her big eyes and asked in confusion, "How to dredge them?" Luchuan didn't dare to look at Haruko Kishimoto and said, "Just rub it yourself." Ah. Haruko Kishimoto immediately covered her face in shame. "Is that so?" Suddenly, she turned around, looked at Luchuan with a flushed face, and said, I feel a little inconvenient. Can you help me?" Chapter 243, Taking Advantage of the Situation. Hearing this, Luchuan quickly said, "How can this be done, Haruko? We Chinese have an old saying that men and women should not touch each other. If I help you, wouldn't it be like taking advantage of you?" Kishimoto Haruko moved towards Luchuan and said, "Isn't it the doctor's duty to try his best to meet the patient's requirements? And only the two of us know about this. I won't tell anyone else." Luchuan was full of hesitation, but finally agreed and said, "Okay, but I might be a little strong. You have to be patient." Kishimoto Haruko said coquettishly, "Hateful." Then she climbed directly on Luchuan, leaned close to his ear, and whispered, "Then let me feel how strong you are." Luchuan took a deep breath, then stood up, and pressed Kishimoto Haruko on the sofa with his backhand. Haruko Kishimoto turned pale, and frowned and asked, "Luchuan, what are you doing?" The drunken look on Luchuan's face completely disappeared, and his expression returned to calm. He said coldly, "I noticed that your grandfather was not right when we were having dinner today. After rescuing him from the airport, I clearly told him not to drink. But he drank so much with me today, as if he had forgotten what I said before. And now you come to seduce me again." My impression of Haruko is not such a casual person. What do you want to do? Haruko Kishimoto was obviously panicked and said, I really just want you to help me cure my illness. I don't want to do anything else." Although she said so, her eyes began to shine. It was obvious that she wanted to pass on a message to Naoki Kishimoto when she saw that the matter was exposed. Seeing this, Luchuan immediately twisted his hand seal to control the power in Haruko Kishimoto's body so that she could not use this power to pass on the message. Then he found that the power in Haruko Kishimoto's body belonged to the power of the soul. The reason why she came to seduce him was that her mind was controlled by someone. Without hesitation, he immediately used his means to extract the power of the soul from Haruko Kishimoto's body. Haruko Kishimoto's eyes suddenly became clear. Seeing that she was pressed on the sofa by Luchuan, she was surprised and said, "Luchuan, what are we doing?" Seeing that Haruko Kishimoto had returned to normal, Luchuan let go of her hand and said, "You were controlled by someone else's mind, and you wanted to seduce me just now." Haruko Kishimoto's face changed, and she recalled what Naoki Kishimoto said to her, and asked quickly, "Then, did I succeed?" Luchuan smiled and said, "Almost. You are too beautiful, and you are trying so hard to seduce me. If I hadn't noticed something was wrong a long time ago, maybe I would have really fallen today." Haruko Kishimoto breathed a sigh of relief, but after realizing that Luchuan was teasing her, a trace of shame appeared on her face again. She quickly buttoned up a few buttons on her chest and said with a red face, "Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." Luchuan smiled and asked, "What's going on? Why are you controlled?" Kishimoto Haruko quickly told her about Naoki Kishimoto's abnormality and the love pill he gave her. "I don't know why grandpa has become like this. Since you rescued us from Ichiro, I felt that he was a little different from the past. I didn't expect him to let me seduce you. I even doubted that he was not my grandpa at all." Luchuan pondered for a long time, unable to figure out why Naoki Kishimoto had such a change, and even more unable to figure out why he had such a thing as a love pill. You know, this thing is a pill that can only be refined by practitioners. Ordinary people, even powerful warriors, can't know the existence of such a thing. He observed the power of the soul that was controlled by him, and soon felt a sense of familiarity. "Ancestor Huankun?" Luchuan frowned, and his expression became solemn. Haruko Kishimoto asked, "Have you found anything?" Lu Chuan said, this power is very similar to the power of the Huanquan ancestor we met in the volcanic cave. I suspect that your grandfather may be controlled by the Huanquan ancestor. Haruko Kishimoto's face changed. Huanquan ancestor? Isn't he sealed? Could it be that he ran out? Lu Chuan said, I don't know either, but he is unlikely to be able to break free from the seal. Your grandfather may be controlled by him in other ways. The Huanquan ancestor is a powerful Yuanying stage warrior. If he really ran out, why would he bother to control others, and even let Haruko Kishimoto seduce himself? He can kill himself with just a flick of his finger. Haruko Kishimoto was worried and asked, will my grandfather be in trouble? Lu Chuan said, don't worry, as long as it's not the old man Huanquan who comes here in person, everything will turn around. Let's play along first, and pretend to successfully control me later, and then we'll see what your grandfather will do. According to his speculation, if the controlled Naoki Kishimoto had a way to deal with him, he would definitely not use the love pill, so the other party probably didn't have the strength to defeat him head on. Haruko Kishimoto nodded, and was about to get up and go out. Lu Chuan pulled her back and said, why are you in such a hurry? If you really succeeded in seducing me, we are doing that thing right now. How could we get out so soon? Haruko Kishimoto was a little confused and said, I saw people on the internet saying that this kind of thing can be done in 3 minutes. Why did it take so long? Lu Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and said, I'm in such good health. How could it be over in 3 minutes? I feel like you look down on me a little bit. Haruko Kishimoto was embarrassed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I just don't quite understand. Then, what shall we do now? Lu Chuan said, how about I prove that it can take 3 minutes? Ah. Haruko Kishimoto widened her eyes and looked at Lu Chuan in disbelief, her face suddenly red to her neck. Really? Really? Lu Chuan laughed and said, just a joke, just a joke. Have you forgotten that you took the initiative to become a lantern messenger? Haruko Kishimoto's heart skipped a beat. She had experienced several life and death situations before, and her emotions were ups and downs. She really forgot about it. Lu Chuan said, I said I would help you solve this problem. Now is the time to kill some time. Just lie down on the sofa. Haruko Kishimoto nodded and lay down on the sofa obediently. Lu Chuan used his means to cut off the connection between the contract in Haruko Kishimoto's body and Tamamonami. After a long time, Lu Chuan solved the problem in Haruko Kishimoto's body. After the two discussed it, they walked out of the room together. Haruko Kishimoto came to Naoki Kishimoto and said, Grandpa, Lu Chuan and I have done that thing, and he has become my slave. Chapter 244 Come and Kiss Me. Hearing this, Naoki Kishimoto's eyes lit up, and he turned his head to look at Lu Chuan behind Haruko Kishimoto, and said with a smile, did the love pill work? Haruko Kishimoto nodded. Naoki Kishimoto thought for a moment and said, give him an order, and I'll see if he really listens to you. Lu Chuan took a step forward, stared at Naoki Kishimoto, and shouted, are you questioning my loyalty to my master? He knew very well what the love pill was like. If he really had a relationship with Haruko Kishimoto, he would only be loyal to Haruko Kishimoto and would not listen to anyone else. Since it was a show, it had to be done more thoroughly. Haruko Kishimoto looked at Lu Chuan's serious appearance and almost couldn't help laughing. However, in order to avoid being suspected by Naoki Kishimoto, she quickly said, Lu Chuan, you must not be rude to Grandpa. Lu Chuan quickly said to Haruko Kishimoto, yes, master. Naoki Kishimoto did not care and said, give him an order, preferably one that he would never agree to under normal circumstances. Haruko Kishimoto nodded, and a hint of teasing suddenly flashed in her big glasses, and then she said to Lu Chuan, come and kiss me. Lu Chuan's eyes widened, and he looked at Haruko Kishimoto in disbelief, wondering if he had not cleaned up the spiritual power in her body. However, Naoki Kishimoto was watching from the side, and in order not to reveal the truth, he could only walk up to Haruko Kishimoto and hugged her in his arms. Haruko Kishimoto's face was full of tension, and there was still some expectation in her eyes. Lu Chuan showed a questioning look to Haruko Kishimoto. Haruko Kishimoto pretended not to see it. Lu Chuan had no choice but to lower his head and kiss her soft lips. Haruko Kishimoto felt like she had succeeded in doing something bad, and her breathing became more rapid due to her excitement. Naoki Kishimoto laughed and said, "It seems that Lu Chuan has indeed become your slave. In this way, my plan can proceed smoothly." Haruko Kishimoto seized the opportunity and quickly asked, "Grandpa, what is our plan?" Naoki Kishimoto said, "Tomorrow we will ask Lu Chuan to capture the girl named Zonglinger, and then we will go back to the island together to help me. I'll help the ancestor break the seal." Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes and thought to himself that it was indeed the bastard Huanquan patriarch. Haruko Kishimoto was afraid that asking too much would expose the problem, so she nodded quickly and said, "Yes." Naoki Kishimoto looked at Lu Chuan again and said, "The effect of the love pill will deepen the more times you have sex. This kid can make such a rapid breakthrough in the Dharma-ending age. He must have something to rely on. In order to prevent him from getting out of control, you should have sex with him a few more times tonight. Do you hear me?" Haruko Kishimoto blushed and said, "Yes." Naoki Kishimoto waved his hand and said, "Okay, deepening control is important. Take him back to the room." Haruko Kishimoto dragged Lu Chuan back to the presidential suite and breathed a sigh of relief. "Have you found anything?" Lu Chuan said, "I have carefully observed him just now and found that he is indeed controlled by the Yellow Spring Patriarch. To be more precise, he is the Yellow Spring Patriarch." Haruko Kishimoto's face changed and said, "This? How is this possible?" "Then my grandfather." Lu Chuan said, "Don't worry, listen to me. Although your grandfather's body is controlled by the Yellow Spring Patriarch, if I'm not mistaken, it should be just a wisp of his soul. The power of this kind of soul is limited and not enough to completely take over a person, so he should have put your grandfather into a deep sleep and then took over your grandfather's body. I sense that his power is not very strong. I should be able to kill him easily, but considering your grandfather's safety, I held back and didn't dare to do it. Tonight I will specially refine a few talismans to deal with the soul and wait until tomorrow to take care of it unexpectedly so that your grandfather will not be in danger of life." Haruko Kishimoto breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Lu Chuan, it's a good thing you are here. Otherwise I really don't know what to do." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "Let's not talk about this for now." He walked up to Haruko Kishimoto and pushed her against the wall. "Tell me why you asked me to kiss you at that time." Haruko Kishimoto's face was suddenly full of tension. Feeling the man's breath coming towards her, her legs were clamped together. She didn't dare to look directly at Lu Chuan and said guiltily, "The situation was urgent at that time, and it had to be an order that you would not accept normally. I didn't want to make it difficult for you, so I thought of this. But why do I feel like you are taking advantage of me on purpose?" Lu Chuan stared at her and asked, "Is that so?" Haruko Kishimoto nodded quickly. "Really?" Lu Chuan said, "But your grandfather asked you to do it with me a few more times to strengthen control. He might be eavesdropping at the wall now. In order not to be exposed, should we pretend to be real?" Haruko Kishimoto became nervous instantly. She felt that what Lu Chuan said made sense. In order to ensure the safety of her grandfather, she certainly couldn't be exposed. If this was the case, it was not impossible to pretend to be real. Just when she was struggling whether to agree or not, Lu Chuan laughed and said, "Look at your blushing face. Why didn't you look like this when I asked you to kiss me just now? I was joking with you. I have set up a ban in the room. If your grandfather really comes to eavesdrop, I will find out. Then we can just pretend to shake the bed." Kishimoto Haruko was dumbfounded. She thought Lu Chuan was serious just now. When she reacted, she was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a crack to get in. Then she gritted her teeth and said, "So you were deliberately teasing me just now?" Lu Chuan felt a sense of revenge and said with a smile, "No, I was just joking with you. You won't take it seriously, right?" Kishimoto Haruko clenched her fists, glared at Lu Chuan angrily, and said, "How could I take it seriously? I was about to refuse you, but you confessed yourself. Can't I see that you are joking? I drank too much today and went to bed first." After that, she went into the bedroom angrily. Lu Chuan couldn't help laughing, thinking that she looked cute when she was angry. Without thinking anymore, he immediately sat cross-legged on the sofa and began to refine the talisman to deal with the soul. With his strength, he could of course directly kill the soul hidden in Naoki Kishimoto's body, but doing so would be dangerous to Naoki Kishimoto. If Huangquan Patriarch was forced into a corner, he might directly drag Naoki Kishimoto to be the scapegoat. Therefore, the premise of getting rid of Huangquan Patriarch's soul must be to force him out of Naoki Kishimoto's body first. The next morning, Haruko Kishimoto brought the slave Luchuan to Naoki Kishimoto again. Naoki Kishimoto asked, "How many times did you come last night? Have you strengthened your control over him?" Before Haruko Kishimoto could speak, Luchuan on the side said, "I'm so powerful, I came 13 times last night. How about it? Awesome." Haruko Kishimoto was stunned, thinking how shameless you are. Who came 13 times with you? She knew that this was Luchuan's revenge on her, but she didn't dare to refute it. She could only nod with a red face and said, "It is indeed 13 times. Naoki Kishimoto nodded with satisfaction and said, "Then there should be no hidden dangers. Okay, let's set off to Jiangbi and capture Zanlinger. Luchuan, help me get something." Luchuan smiled and walked over and said, "Glad to help." He reached out to take the thing, and just when he was about to get it, a talisman suddenly appeared in his palm, and then quickly slapped it on Naoki Kishimoto's forehead. The talisman glowed with golden light and wrapped Naoki Kishimoto, and then he screamed. Luchuan didn't hesitate, and took out 2 more talismans, and stuck them on Naoki Kishimoto. A thick black fog emerged from Naoki Kishimoto's body, and soon, the soul of the Yellow Spring Patriarch had to leave Naoki Kishimoto's body, turning into a phantom of the Yellow Spring Patriarch, floating in the air. Chapter 245, Green Dragon Sword. Damn you, Kit, weren't you controlled? Why did you suddenly attack me? Huangquan Patriarch looked at Luchuan furiously, obviously not expecting such a change. Luchuan quickly pulled over Naoki Kishimoto, who was about to fall to the ground, and handed him to Haruko Kishimoto behind him. He circulated his spiritual power in his palm, alerting Huangquan Patriarch to his move, and said coldly, "Who told you that I was controlled? I was just using your trick to see what you were going to do." Huangquan Patriarch gritted his teeth and said, "Who are you? If you are an ordinary cultivator, even if you have cultivated to the 9th level of the Golden Core, you can't detect my existence. And you actually saw through my methods so easily, there must be something wrong with you." Luchuan laughed and said, "Seeing through your methods means there is something wrong? So it's normal that I can only do what you want?" Huangquan Patriarch rolled his eyes and said, "Luchuan, you are indeed very powerful, but now is the Dharma-ending age. Even if you have inherited some cultivators, if you don't have a teacher to teach you, it will be easy for you to go astray. You also know my true strength. Even in the cultivation world, I'm a strong man who can dominate one side in the nascent soul stage. Why don't we put aside our past grudges and cooperate? You help me break the seal, and I will guide you on your path of cultivation, just like the kind of genius boy who encounters the old grandfather hidden in the ring, that you modern people like very much. We can also write such a beautiful story together. Of course, I know you must not be at ease to help me break the seal directly, so I can make concessions and let my soul guide you first. After your strength reaches the nascent soul stage, you can help me break the seal, so you won't have any worries. Of course, if you like, I can also let my soul hide in the ring. How about it?" Luchuan curled his lips and said, "Don't be funny. If you come to guide me, I'm afraid I will never be able to walk on the right path in my life. I think you want to keep your soul, so you deliberately fooled me?" Huangquan Patriarch was immediately annoyed and said, "Although I'm sealed, I'm a serious and upright person. How could I possibly fool a junior like you? I don't know how many people lined up to worship me as a master, but I didn't even look at them. Don't take advantage of me here." Luchuan snorted coldly and said, "Stop talking nonsense. A righteous person doesn't have such a thing as a love pill. Tell me how you control Mr. Naoki." Huangquan Patriarch smiled and said, "Since you want to know, it doesn't hurt for me to tell you. Did you get a jade pendant containing tremendous power? That jade pendant is called the Soul Nourishing Jade. It used to be my personal jade pendant. It has the effect of nourishing the soul, and my soul has been hidden in it. That day you brought the soul nourishing jade to treat them, and I took the opportunity to possess this person and control his mind. Originally, I thought I could realize some plans in this way, but I didn't expect that you would ruin it before I even started. Lu Chuan suddenly realized that Huang Quan Patriarch actually relied on this method to control Naoki Kishimoto. He quickly took out the ancient jade and checked it carefully. After confirming that there was no problem inside, he breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at the shadow of Huang Quan Patriarch and said, "You should know that your soul is not my opponent at all. The doubts in my heart have been solved, and there is no need for this soul to exist." Huang Quan Patriarch looked sinister and said, "Boy, I'm sealed only temporarily. Once I break the seal, I will kill you first." Lu Chuan laughed and said, "Then I wish you to break the seal as soon as possible." Then he took out another talisman and pasted it on the shadow of Huang Quan Patriarch. The shadow suddenly emitted thick black fog, as if it melted and disappeared bit by bit. "Boy, wait for me. One day I will make you kneel before me and repent." It seemed that he knew that his soul was no match for Lu Chuan, so Huang Quan Patriarch did not resist and let Lu Chuan's spell erode his soul completely. Seeing Huang Quan Patriarch's shadow dissipate, Lu Chuan also breathed a sigh of relief. He was not worried that Huang Quan Patriarch would break through the seal. After all, this old monster had been sealed for who knows how long. If he could break through the seal, he would have run out long ago. Why bother fooling people here? Kishimoto Haruko was still nervous and asked Lu Chuan, has he been solved? Lu Chuan smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, his soul has been eliminated. There is no need to worry about any danger in the future. Let's take your grandfather back first. His mind is controlled, and he needs to recover." Kishimoto Haruko nodded and left here with Lu Chuan and Naoki Kishimoto. 2 hours after they left, in the air, a wisp of black mist suddenly appeared, then slowly expanded, and finally turned into the shadow of Huang Quan Patriarch. But this shadow was almost transparent compared to the previous one, and looked like a ghost. He showed a sneer on his face, and said to himself, "Juniors are juniors. I'm also a powerful Yuan stage after all. Even if it is just a wisp of my soul, how can you destroy it, just because you want to?" The reason why he patiently fooled Lu Chuan at that time was to buy time and create a way for his soul to survive. Although the power of this remaining soul is extremely weak, there is no way to consider breaking the seal, but it is more than enough to make that kid remember. Even if he can't kill him, he must regret going against me, Huang Quan. As soon as the voice fell, the shadow of Huang Quan Patriarch dissipated instantly. A gust of cold wind blew, making the whole corridor a little gloomy. Cheyenne Martial Arts Association. Zhao Shuren and Zhao tasted in front of a table. On the table was a rectangular box, and in the box lay an ancient bronze sword. Zhao Te turned his head to look at Zhao Shuren and said, "Dad, this is the stuff of the Grand Elder of Xuanzang. Soon, the Grand Elder's disciple will come to take it away. Do you really want to use this to deal with Lu Chuan?" Zhao Shuren's face was gloomy. After finding out that Lu Chuan had emptied the warehouse of their martial arts association by some unknown method, he almost went crazy. Now he only wanted to take revenge on Lu Chuan and take back his things. He gritted his teeth and said, "Lu Chuan has mastered heavenly martial arts. I'm no match for him. If I want to defeat this kid, I can only rely on this thing. This sword is called King Jiao. It was obtained by the Great Elder in an ancient tomb. He had something to do at the time, so he left the sword in our house. According to him, the sword contains the spirit of a dragon that has become a spirit, so it can exert an extremely terrifying power. As long as I hold this sword, I can gain the power of the dragon spirit. The dragon is the species closest to a dragon, and its power can be imagined. I'm just borrowing it. After defeating Lu Chuan and getting the thing back, we will put the sword back in the box. Even the Great Elder's apprentice will never find anything." Zhao Te smiled and gave a thumbs up, saying, "Dad, you are still smart. With this sword, Lu Chuan is definitely not your opponent." Zhao Shuren sneered, took the King Jiao sword in his hand, and said, "Lu Chuan, wait for me. With the King Jiao sword in your hand, don't even think about leaving Cheyenne intact." Chapter 246 The Trembling Green Dragon. In the prime location of Cheyenne, in a luxurious villa worth more than 100 million yuan, Lu Chuan and Haruko Kishimoto came to the yard. "Your grandfather is in good health and his coma is only temporary. You can give him the medicine according to the prescription I prescribed. He will recover in a few days. Lu Chuan said lightly. Haruko Kishimoto nodded and then said apologetically, Lu Chuan, I'm so sorry. Originally, when you came to Cheyenne, I should have treated you well, but I didn't expect to encounter such a thing again. In the end, it was you who solved the trouble. I really don't know how to repay your kindness to our Kishimoto family. Lu Chuan smiled and said, Ancestor Huan came for me, so you don't have to feel that you owe me anything. This is what I should do. Now that the trouble has been solved, I have to go back to Jiangli. Haruko Kishimoto was surprised and said, are you going back now? Lu Chuan smiled and said, you still have to take care of your grandfather, so I won't bother you anymore. He also has to go back as soon as possible to practice the Zuanhuang immortal body. Hearing this, Haruko Kishimoto had no choice but to nod. Then she remembered something and asked quickly, by the way, is the impact of me taking the love pill serious? Will its effect disappear over time? Lu Chuan thought for a while and said, in theory, after taking the love pill, this effect will always exist and will not disappear with the passage of time. Haruko Kishimoto glared. Then do you have a way to help me get rid of this effect? Lu Chuan shrugged and said, although the love pill doesn't sound very serious, it is indeed a high-level pill. It is not so easy to get rid of its effect. I can't do it now. Haruko Kishimoto's face was suddenly full of worry. Then wouldn't I become a witch? As long as I have sex with others, I can make them my slaves. Who would dare to marry me in the future? Lu Chuan laughed and said, you don't have to be so pessimistic. Everything has two sides. The effect of the love pill is said to make the man who has sex with you become your slave. In fact, in essence, it makes that man wholeheartedly devoted to you and willing to give everything for you. You find a man who is devoted to you and willing to give everything for you. Having sex with him will only deepen this feeling. You will never have to worry about him betraying you. Isn't this a good thing for you? Kishimoto Haruko said, but I always feel that this is weird. Besides, what if the person I like doesn't like me? If I use this method to control him, wouldn't the love I get be a deformed one? After saying that, she secretly glanced at Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan thought about it and felt that it was true, so he said, then you wait for me to find a way to resolve this effect, and then I will help you solve this problem. Kishimoto Haruko could only nod. Lu Chuan didn't stay any longer. After saying goodbye to Kishimoto Haruko, he left the villa. Kishimoto Haruko watched Lu Chuan leave with a lost expression, and then said to herself, but Lu Chuan is so outstanding, there must be many girls around him, and the effect of the love pill is an advantage for me. Or I will take him away next time I see Lu Chuan. Oh, how can I think so? I'm such a bad woman. She covered her face shyly, turned around and ran back to the villa. Lu Chuan wandered around in the big villa of Kishimoto Haruko's family for a long time, almost got lost, and finally found a small door and walked out. Outside the door was a spacious alley, quiet and deserted. Lu Chuan walked out along the alley, intending to take a taxi to the train station. At this moment, Zhao Shuren and Zhao Tei, father and son, suddenly appeared and blocked Lu Chuan's way. Lu Chuan, you robber. Quickly hand over the things you robbed from my Cheyenne Martial Arts Association. Otherwise I will kill you here today and remove a scourge from the martial arts world. Zhao Shuren shouted angrily, holding the King Jiao sword. Lu Chuan raised his eyebrows and said, robbery? I had your permission that day, and what you took were all my spoils of war. How can it be considered robbery? Zhao Shuren's face was full of anger, and he gritted his teeth and said, who knew that you would actually empty our warehouse? You must return all the resources of my Cheyenne Martial Arts Association. Lu Chuan curled his lips and said, I just treat you the same way you treat our Jiangli Martial Arts Association. Why are you so angry? Do you want to taste my Fantian seal? Zhao Shuren shuddered instinctively, then raised the King Jiao sword in his hand and shouted, Lu Chuan, your heavenly martial arts are indeed powerful, but I'm not afraid of you at all now. The sword in my hand is a divine weapon. It seals the spirit of a dragon and is extremely powerful. Even if you have heavenly martial arts, I can kill you with one sword. If you know what's good for you, return the things quickly and I can spare your life. Otherwise, I can only let you see the power of the green dragon sword. Lu Chuan glanced at the rusty bronze sword in Zhao Shuren's hand and felt a trace of extraordinary aura on it. He was not afraid and said lightly, "Then let me see it." Zhao Shuren snorted coldly, "You asked for it." Then he raised the green dragon sword above his head and input internal energy into it. In the blink of an eye, a strong wind suddenly blew in the alley, and a dark cloud appeared in the sky, with lightning and thunder. Then, a phantom of a dragon covered with green scales appeared above Zhao Shuren, entwined along the sword body, and rushed into the sky. Zhao Te was frightened by the breath of the green dragon and his legs were shaking. He was so scared that his heart and gall were about to burst. He muttered to himself, so scary. Zhao Shuren did not expect that the green dragon sword would be so powerful. He felt more confident in his heart. Then he pointed the sword at Lu Chuan and slashed it fiercely, shouting, "Die." The shadow of the green dragon flew towards Lu Chuan in an instant, with a posture that seemed to tear Lu Chuan to pieces. Seeing this, Lu Chuan did not dare to hesitate at all, and immediately released his spiritual power to deal with the green dragon. Although he could see that the green dragon was just the evolution of sword energy, he did not dare to underestimate its power. He was full of momentum, changed his hand gestures, and was ready to perform the heaven-turning seal. This kid can definitely not block this sword. Zhao Shuren was full of confidence. But just when the green dragon was about to rush to Lu Chuan, it seemed to smell something terrible. Its eyes glared, and it braked suddenly, then crawled to the ground, trembling. Zhao Shuren was stunned, holding the green dragon sword, and waving it a few more times, wanting the green dragon to help him deal with Lu Chuan. But no matter how he attacked, even if he injected internal energy into the green dragon sword, the green dragon spirit didn't react at all, and just lay in front of Lu Chuan, trembling, and didn't dare to raise his head. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 247, Divine Weapon Recognizes Its Master. Lu Chuan didn't expect that the green dragon would suddenly become like this. He didn't know whether to use the heaven flipping seal that he wanted to use. He looked at the frightened look of the green dragon, and a possibility suddenly came to his mind. Could it be because of my true dragon fate? The green dragon in front of him, although it can also be called a dragon, is still in the category of a dragon, and is still a long way from a dragon. Therefore, after seeing the real dragon, the blood suppression from the depths of the soul was awakened, and naturally there was only trembling. Zhao Shuren was still holding the green dragon sword and waving it. Logically, the green dragon spirit would only listen to the orders of the sword holder. Whoever injected power to stimulate the green dragon spirit to attack, the green dragon would listen to him. But now he has injected power into the green dragon sword more than a dozen times, and has not received any response. Zhao Te on the side said, "Dad, this sword is not broken, right?" Zhao Shuren was confused and said, "It shouldn't be. How can such a magic weapon break just like that?" Then he injected power into it again, trying to force the green dragon spirit. The King Gyro, which had been lying on the ground and trembling, could no longer bear it. It could sense Zhao Shuren's urging, but Lu Chuan's suppression was too terrifying. It didn't dare to move at all, so it kept enduring the power that Zhao Shuren injected. Now it has reached the limit of its endurance. If Zhao Shuren injects more power to urge it, it will explode. So it simply flew back to Zhao Shuren. Zhao Te hurriedly said, "Dad, there is a reaction." Zhao Shuren thought that the King Gyro sword had returned to normal, and he was relieved. But the next second, he saw the King Gyro phantom angrily came in front of him, directly wrapped up the King Gyro sword and even glared at him. Zhao Shuren blinked and fell into self-doubt. Did that King Gyro glare at me just now? Zhao Te said, "It seems so." The King Gyro flew in front of Lu Chuan with the King Gyro sword. The sword fell into Lu Chuan's hand without bias. Lu Chuan was surprised, looked at the green dragon, and asked, "Is it for me?" The green dragon nodded obediently, rubbed Lu Chuan with its head, and then went directly into the green dragon sword. Lu Chuan felt a heavy bronze ancient sword in his hand, looked up at Zhao Shuren, grinned and said, President Zhao is really generous and gave me an extra sword. Thank you very much. Zhao Shuren saw that the green dragon sword fell into Lu Chuan's hands. His face changed drastically and he shouted quickly, Lu Chuan, you quickly return this sword to me. The owner of this sword is not someone you can mess with. If you dare to take this sword away, you will die. Lu Chuan laughed and said, this sword ran into my hands by itself. If I return it, wouldn't it be against its own will? If you want this sword, come and get it yourself. As soon as the voice fell, he began to inject spiritual power into the green dragon sword. The blade of the green dragon sword began to tremble slightly, and a faint sound of sword chirping was emitted. Then the rust on it began to fall off, revealing the silver white blade inside. Not long after, the bronze sword, that originally looked like an unearthed cultural relic, was completely transformed into a brand new sword. The hilt of the sword was black, with a green gem in the middle, which sealed the body of the green dragon spirit. The blade was silver white, with strange patterns on it. When the sun shone on it, it reflected cold light, which was chilling. Zhao Shuren and Zhao Te were both unbelievable when they saw this scene. How could the green dragon sword change so much when it was in his hands? Why didn't it become so beautiful when it was in my hands? Zhao Shuren muttered. Lu Chuan was also delighted to see the changes in the green dragon sword, and then looked at Zhao Shuren and Zhao Te, father and son, and shouted, take my sword. He used his strength and slashed a sword forward. The phantom of the green dragon appeared again, but compared with before, the phantom of the green dragon now exuded a faint golden light, and there was a bit more pressure on the body that only a real dragon could have. The overall image was closer to the dragon, and the power was terrifying. Zhao Shuren's face changed drastically when he saw this, and he grabbed Zhao Te and was about to run away. Unfortunately, how could their speed be faster than the green dragon? The phantom of the green dragon caught up with the two of them in the blink of an eye, and then instantly transformed into endless sword energy, wrapping Zhao Shuren and Zhao Te in it. Two screams rang out, and the clothes on Zhao Shuren and Zhao Te were all torn apart by the sword energy, and there were dense wounds on their bodies, which looked a bit creepy. This was the effect of Lu Chuan controlling his strength. If he wanted, the sword just now could completely cut Zhao Shuren and his son into meat paste. Good sword. Lu Chuan looked at the green dragon sword with excitement. With the assistance of this sword, his strength could at least be improved by one level. He turned his head to look at Zhao Shuren and his son, smiled and said, thank you for the sword, goodbye. Then he left the alley. Zhao Te's face was full of fear, still in the aftermath of the sword just now, and then said, Dad, the King Jiao sword was taken away by Lu Chuan. What should we do if the elder knows? Zhao Shuren was furious and roared, you ask me, who should I ask? If you hadn't urged me to use the King Jiao sword to deal with Lu Chuan, would things have turned out like this? Zhao Te's eyes glared and said, Dad, I didn't sue you. Zhao Shuren glared at him. Zhao Te didn't dare to speak immediately. Zhao Shuren gritted his teeth and said, at this point, we can only put all the responsibility on Lu Chuan. This way, we can use the hands of the Great Elder's apprentice to avenge this vengeance. The one who comes to take the King Jiao sword as a chief disciple of the Great Elder. It is said that he has reached the third level of the Zuan realm. I don't believe that Lu Chuan can even deal with a master of the third level of the Zuan realm. Overseas, on a hidden island, the headquarters of the law enforcers is located here. In a building full of modern atmosphere, many people are busy, some are processing documents, some are fighting, and some are sneaking around. Without exception, they are all above the Zuan realm. These people gathered together, it is definitely a force that can shake the world. A figure in a black robe hurried to a room full of computers. She walked to an LCD computer, entered the password, pressed the fingerprint, and immediately appeared on it her own code name, White Tiger. This law enforcer codenamed White Tiger is none other than the one who tried to catch Lu Chuan in the island country but failed. Beihu, do you have anything to report? An emotionless AI voice came from the computer. Beihu said angrily, I met a warrior who had just entered the Zuan realm in the island country. After I explained the existence of the law enforcers to him, he still ignored the rules set by the law enforcers and killed ordinary people in front of me and then fled to China. This person openly challenged the majesty of our law enforcers, so I would like to apply for 3 masters of the first level of the Zuan realm to accompany me to sneak into China, capture this person, and bring him back to the headquarters for trial. After a while, the voice of the AI rang again in the computer. Approved. Chapter 248 Impersonating Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan returned to Jiangbi. When he filled the warehouse of Jiangbi Martial Arts Association, Zhao Beicheng and the senior executives of the association were so excited that they almost cried. Since they joined the Martial Arts Association, they have never seen so many resources. With these resources, it will not take a few years for Jiangbi Martial Arts Association to raise the overall level of apprentices to a higher level. At that time, Jiangbi Martial Arts Association will no longer be the last one in the past. Several senior executives who had thought about resigning before now wanted to slap themselves hard. They all told Lu Chuan that they would dedicate the rest of their lives to Jiangbi Martial Arts Association. No matter what happens in the future, they will not mention resignation again. Seeing everyone's reaction, Lu Chuan was very satisfied. After explaining some things to Zhao Beicheng, he found a quiet room in the association and began to practice Zuan Huang Immortal Body. He set up a ban in the quiet room and then took out the jade bottle containing Zuan Huang Qi, ancient jade, 200 years of ginseng, 1000 years of tortoise shell and various auxiliary materials, and placed them in front of him. The most difficult part of the Zuan Huang Immortal Body is getting started. Once you successfully get started, you only need to find the Zuan Huang Qi to improve. I hope I'm lucky and can get started successfully in one go. Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated, picked up the 200-year-old ginseng and those auxiliary materials, and smelted them. 3 days later, at night, in a dark alley in Jiangbi City, a beggar was looking for food in a trash can. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared and quietly merged into his body. The beggar was slightly stunned and then instantly lost consciousness and fell to the ground. After about half an hour, the beggar who had fallen to the ground got up from the ground, stretched his body, and cursed. Controlling other people's minds consumes too much power. I want this wisp of soul to exist in the world for a long time, so I can only take over other people's bodies. But that damn Lu Chuan weakened the power of my soul a lot, and I can only take over this beggar who has no willpower. You are capable to force me to this point, Huang Quan. No, this beggar is too smelly. I have to find a place to take a shower and change into clean clothes. Thinking of this, he walked out of the alley and took the wallets of several people when he passed by them. An hour later, in a bath center, Huang Quan Leozu took a shower and found someone to massage him, his face full of comfort and comfort. People in this era still know how to enjoy themselves. In my era, everyone only knew how to fight and kill. Where is such a comfortable place for people to enjoy themselves? And in the room next to him, Zhu Yuan was discussing a revenge plan with Du Lang, the second in command of the Hidden Killing Pavilion. Ever since the death of Wu Gong, the leader of the Hidden Killing Pavilion, at the hands of Lu Chuan, Du Lang, as the second in command, has been trying to avenge his elder brother and the brothers who died in the Hidden Killing Pavilion. However, he never found a suitable opportunity. The Zhu family declined because of Lu Chuan, and with the suppression of the Han family, the Zhu family has now fallen into a third-tier small family in Jiangbi. Needless to say, Zhu Yuan hated Lu Chuan. He dreamed of killing Lu Chuan, but he was not strong enough, so he could only come to Du Lang to discuss a strategy. Although Lu Chuan is strong, you are a killer, and you are famous for sneak attacks. If you can act when Lu Chuan is not prepared, you may be able to kill him, Zhu Yuan said solemnly. Poison Wolf said coldly, that being said, we can't even find Lu Chuan's whereabouts now, so where can we find an opportunity to attack? Zhu Yuan also fell into deep thought and said, this kind of opportunity is hard to come by, so we can only wait patiently for the opportunity. On the other side, after the massage, Huang Quan Patriarch sent the technician away, got up and stretched. He changed into his newly bought clothes, came to the mirror, stared at his current face for a while, and then a playful smile appeared on his face. Then he cast a spell, and in a short while, His appearance began to change, slowly turning into Lu Chuan's appearance. Huangquan Patriarch looked at his face, with a satisfied smile on his face, and said to himself in a somewhat sinister way, Lu Chuan, I can't kill you, but I can do evil with your face. I will help you provoke a few big shots here, and see how you end up then. After making up his mind, he walked out of the room, and planned to go to the toilet first. Zhu Yuan and Poison Wolf also walked out of the room. When Zhu Yuan saw Lu Chuan, his face changed. He quickly dragged Dulang back to the room and said excitedly, I didn't expect Lu Chuan to come to the bath center. It seems that even God is helping us. Dulang's eyes lit up and asked, was that Lu Chuan just now? Zhu Yuan nodded and said, yes, even if he turned into ashes, I still remember his face. Dulang narrowed his eyes and said, in this case, what are we hesitating about? Judging from his appearance, he should go to the toilet. Let's follow him quietly and give him a fatal blow while he is not paying attention. Zhu Yuan nodded and said, Brother Dulang, whether we can avenge our revenge depends on this time. Then the two walked out of the room, quietly followed Lu Chuan, and followed him into the toilet. Huangquan Patriarch was thinking about what kind of big shot he should provoke in order to cause the greatest trouble to Lu Chuan. At this moment, he suddenly felt a chill on his neck and then saw blood gushing out. The aorta in his neck was cut open. He turned around quickly and saw a man with a gloomy face holding a scimitar and sneering at him. Lu Chuan, I have cut the aorta in your neck. Even if a god comes, he can't save you. You probably never dreamed that you would die like this. Huangquan Patriarch quickly covered his neck with his hands and asked with difficulty, who are you? Dulang said proudly, I'm Dulang, the second in command of Yinsha Pavilion. You killed my eldest brother and many of my brothers in Yinsha Pavilion. I'm here to avenge him today. At this time, Zhu Yuan also walked into the toilet and laughed at the blood gushing out of Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan, I didn't expect you to be so careless and let Dulang kill you like this. But this result is exactly what I want. You have ruined my Zhu family. Only when you die can I vent the anger in my heart. The two people looked at Lu Chuan with gloating, waiting for him to die from excessive blood loss. Huangquan Patriarch cursed inwardly, thinking that Lu Chuan had so many enemies. He was just taking a shower, but his throat was cut. Without hesitation, he cast a spell to seal the wound on his neck. Then a thick black mist burst out from his body. He looked at Dulang and Zhu Yuan with a cold face and said, I can't deal with Lu Chuan, so can't I deal with small characters like you? It just so happens that my blood demon art hasn't absorbed nutrients for many years. Since you have taken the initiative to deliver it to me, I won't be polite. As soon as he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand to Dulang, and a suction force appeared, and Dulang's body flew over uncontrollably. No. Dulang's face changed wildly, realizing that his idea was too naive. Huangquan Patriarch grabbed Dulang's head, and the black mist wrapped around it, wrapping it up. But in just a few seconds, the black mist dissipated, and Dulang had turned into a dried body. Chapter 249 Contemporary Model. Zhu Yuan had never thought that Lu Chuan, who had his throat cut, could have such terrible means. After seeing the poisonous wolf being sucked dry in an instant, he was so scared that his face turned pale, his whole body went limp, and he peed his pants. He wanted to run, but his legs were no longer under his control, and they just kept shaking. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't lift them. Huangquan Patriarch was nourished by flesh and blood, his face was intoxicated, and he murmured, it's so cool, I haven't tasted this kind of taste for many years, and I have practiced hard, but how can I absorb power? By relying on the blood magic skill to achieve faster results. Zhu Yuan swallowed his saliva, looked at Lu Chuan with horror, and said, Lu Chuan, I didn't expect you to practice this evil skill in private. I'm going to report you to the supervision department. You're finished. Huangquan Patriarch looked at Zhu Yuan, raised his hand, and sucked him in. Report me? Do you think you still have this chance? As soon as the voice fell, Zhu Yuan was also wrapped in the black mist, and in the blink of an eye he became another dried body, and died with his eyes open. After solving these two problems, Huangquan Patriarch used magic to clean the blood on his body, healed the wound on his neck, tidied his clothes, and left the toilet calmly. On a busy commercial pedestrian street, Huangquan Patriarch stopped a young man and asked which powerful people in Jiangbai were there so as to determine the target. At this time, a group of security guards came over and drove the pedestrians on the street to both sides. Hurry up and get out of the way. Young Master Zeng is here to play. Be sensible and don't get in the way here. When the people on the pedestrian street heard that it was young Master Zeng coming, they quickly ran to both sides and made way. It was obvious that they were very afraid of this young Master Zeng. Seeing this, Huangquan Patriarch asked the young man, "Who is young Master Zeng?" The young man said, "You don't know young Master Zeng Heo? He is the son of Zeng Qian, the richest man in Jiangbai province. This commercial street is opened by his family." Huangquan Patriarch's eyes lit up when he heard this. Then, as he considered a big shot here, the young man said, "Of course he is. He is the young master of the richest man's family. This identity is not something that ordinary people can provoke. In Jiangbai province, only the Han family can compete with them." Huangquan Patriarch smiled and made up his mind to make fun of this young Master Zeng. Soon, 4 people carried a recliner to the pedestrian street. Lying on it was Zeng Heo, the eldest son of the Zeng family. As soon as he appeared, people on both sides of the pedestrian street immediately whispered. Most of them looked unhappy, as if they all hated this guy. Zeng Heo lay on the recliner, crossed his legs, not caring about the discussions of the people around him, and picked his nose with his hands. At this moment, Huangquan Patriarch suddenly jumped to the middle of the pedestrian street and stopped Zeng Heo. Zeng Heo looked at Huangquan Patriarch and asked, "What are you doing?" Huangquan Patriarch sneered and said, "Of course I'm going to beat you." Then he rushed over and kicked the 4 people carrying the recliner away. The recliner fell to the ground with a bang, and Zeng Heo rolled on the ground. He got up with gritted teeth and looked at Huangquan Patriarch with an angry face, shouting, "You fucking horse." Huangquan Patriarch rushed up without saying a word, grabbed Zeng Heo's collar, and slapped him in the face. Zeng Heo's teeth flew out, and he was stunned. Huangquan Patriarch did not stop and slapped Zeng Heo in the face a few more times, and he was beaten into a pig's head. Feeling that he had beaten Zeng Heo enough, Patriarch Huangquan stopped and threw the already dying Zeng Heo aside. He turned his head and glanced around, thinking to himself, "I'm wearing the face of Lu Chuan and beating people in the street. The person I beat is the son of the richest man. If this matter gets out, Lu Chuan will definitely be spurned by everyone, and he will definitely become a laughing stock in the whole Jiangbai." As soon as this thought came to his mind, warm applause broke out all around, and many people cheered. "Good fight. I've long disliked this grandson. If I could afford to offend him, I would have dealt with him long ago. Today, someone finally vented my anger for me. This guy is so fierce that he even dared to hit young Master Zeng. It's really admirable." But when he slapped him, it was the voice of all of us. "That's right. Young Master Zeng is notorious in our area. I don't know how many people want to beat him up, but because of his status, no one dares to do it. Today, a hero finally did it. I have to give him a thumbs up." Huangquan Patriarch was stunned for a moment. He never thought that he would not be criticized by others for beating someone in the street, but instead received cheers from everyone. Isn't this world too chaotic? Beating someone in the street can be praised. The folk customs of modern times are not as simple as our era. Huangquan Patriarch thought helplessly. He quickly walked to Zeng Heo, picked him up, and said, "Ask me my name." Although he failed to discredit Lu Chuan, young Master Zeng must have remembered this grudge. He must make Zeng Heo remember Lu Chuan's name, otherwise his work would be in vain. Zeng Heo was slapped so hard that he saw stars and was confused. He couldn't hear what Huangquan Patriarch said, let alone respond. Huangquan Patriarch frowned. "You were so easily slapped. I didn't use much force." At this time, someone in the crowd shouted, "Look, it's Mr. Zeng." Everyone turned their heads and saw a middle-aged man with a noble appearance and 3 jade rings on his hands walking over surrounded by a group of bodyguards. "Who hid my son?" Zeng Qian shouted. Upon hearing this, Huangquan Patriarch's eyes lit up, and he quickly straightened his chest and raised his head, looking in the direction of Zeng Qian, and shouted, "I will never change my name, Lu Chuan. I was the one who beat your son. If you have the guts, take revenge on me." Zenkai came to Huangquan Patriarch, stared at Zheng Heo who had turned into a pig head, and then looked at Lu Chuan. Huangquan Patriarch thought that Lu Chuan must have been hated by the richest man, and as long as he ran away now, the real Lu Chuan would be unlucky in the future. The next second, Zenkai suddenly clapped his hands and said, "Good. You did a really good job. Little brother Lu, you really helped me a lot." Patriarch Huangquan was confused again. "What do you mean? Am I helping you by beating your son like this?" Zenkai said, "Little brother Lu, you don't know, my son has been spoiled since he was a child, and he always relies on my status to bully others. I told him that he would suffer sooner or later, but he didn't believe it. He thought he was the son of the richest man and no one dared to touch him. I always wanted someone to teach him a lesson, but everyone didn't dare to do anything to him because of his status. You beat him like this today, he will definitely restrain himself in the future, so you have helped me a lot." Then he turned his head and looked around, shouting, "Everyone, from now on, Lu Chuan is my son's life mentor. You all pay attention. Whoever dares to provoke Lu Chuan is provoking me." Patriarch Huangquan was speechless and wished he could slap himself a few times. He obviously came to cause trouble for Lu Chuan, but how come he accumulated a good reputation and connections for this kid? People in modern society are simply terrible. He was extremely annoyed and felt that it was a bit impractical to cause trouble for Lu Chuan in this way, so he turned around and left. Zenkai hurriedly shouted, "Lu Chuan, don't go. I still have to thank you very much. Come back with me, and I will give you a big red envelope." Huangquan Patriarch turned a deaf ear to him. Zenkai praised him with a face full of praise. "You are a chivalrous man who does not seek fame and fortune. You are really a contemporary role model." Huangquan Patriarch walked to the end of the pedestrian street with a depressed face. Just when he was about to turn around, he heard a choked shout. "Brother Lu Chuan?" Chapter 250 Han Qingxi recovers his memory. Huangquan Patriarch was stunned for a moment, then turned around and saw a girl standing behind him wearing a goose yellow dress with a beautiful face, but now her face was full of tears. He asked with a puzzled look, "We know each other?" The girl cried and said, "Brother Lu Chuan, why did you abandon Qingxi? Qingxi, does Qingxi make Brother Lu Chuan hate you so much?" This girl was none other than Han Qingxi, who was cast a spell of forgetfulness by Lu Chuan. Since the last time Lu Chuan left, she did forget the existence of Lu Chuan, but she could clearly feel that she had forgotten a very important person. From that day on, she has been trying hard to remember the person she had forgotten, but she couldn't remember who that person was. This feeling made her almost collapse. Almost every morning, she woke up crying, so she became much more haggard. Today, she came to the pedestrian street to relax, and accidentally saw Lu Chuan, disguised as Huangquan Patriarch. The strange and familiar face hit her heart at once. In just that moment, the spell of forgetfulness cast by Lu Chuan on her lost its effect. She thought of Lu Chuan and everything. The emptiness in her heart was instantly filled with her deep love for Lu Chuan. She once again became the lovelorn Han Qingxi who was influenced by the peach blossom wine, and fell deeply in love with Lu Chuan. Huangquan Patriarch walked up to Han Qingxi and asked, "What is our relationship?" Han Qingxi looked at Lu Chuan aggrievedly and said, "Even if brother Lu Chuan doesn't like Qingxi, Qingxi will always be brother Lu Chuan's fiancé." Huangquan Patriarch's eyes lit up, thinking that Lu Chuan's peach blossom luck was really extraordinary. In addition to Zonglinger and Kishimoto Hiruko, now there is such a beautiful fiancé, which can really make others envious. At the same time, an evil idea popped up in his mind. If I take down Lu Chuan's fiancé, it can be regarded as revenge on him. It just so happens that I haven't felt the taste of a woman for many years. Although this body can only be regarded as a puppet of mine, it is not bad to be able to taste it. Thinking of this, Huangquan Patriarch said in a serious manner, "Qingxi, do you know why I hate you?" Han Qingxi quickly wiped his tears, looked at Lu Chuan, and asked, "Why?" Huangquan Patriarch said, "Because you are disobedient." Han Qingxi was stunned. "Qingxi, disobedient?" Huangquan Patriarch said, "If you really want to be obedient, you should dedicate everything to me, instead of hiding it." Han Qingxi blushed and said, "But Qingxi has given you everything." Huangquan Patriarch glared. "Lu Chuan, this kid has already harmed the girl. And then he said he hated her and abandoned her? This kid is too inhuman. He coughed twice and said, that doesn't count. Let me give you another chance. If you are willing to go to the alley next to me and chat today, I won't hate you anymore. How about that? Han Kingsi nodded happily and said, Kingsi is willing. Huang Kun Patriarch sighed and thought that this girl was really easy to fool. At the same time, he began to envy Lu Chuan. He didn't understand what was so good about this guy that could make girls so fascinated. Why didn't he meet such an obedient girl when he was young? But only after such a beautiful girl is ruined by me, Lu Chuan can experience what regret is. Huang Kun Patriarch showed a sneer on his face and said, come with me. The haggardness on Han Kingsi's face was swept away. As long as Lu Chuan continued to like her, she could always keep a sunny and happy mood. Huang Kun Patriarch took Han Kingsi to an empty alley. He came up to Han Kingsi, put a sly smile on his face, and said, Kingsi, next, let's have an in-depth communication. Han Kingsi was about to say yes, but the next second, she suddenly realized something was wrong, and quickly stepped back a few steps, looking at the Lu Chuan in front of her with a puzzled look, and said, you are not brother Lu Chuan. Old ancestor Huang Quan was full of surprise. You know, his current appearance was transformed by magic, and it can be said that he is almost exactly the same as Lu Chuan. Even if the person who is most familiar with Lu Chuan comes, it is impossible to tell the difference. But he just got a little closer to Han Kingsi, and the girl said that she was not Lu Chuan, which made him very curious, so he asked, how did you tell? Han Kingsi frowned and said, brother Lu Chuan, and I have a tacit understanding. I feel very comfortable when I'm close to him, but you do have a disgusting aura, so you must not be brother Lu Chuan. Patriarch Huang Kun laughed and said, you are right, I'm indeed not Lu Chuan. Han Kingsi was full of anger and said, why did you pretend to be brother Lu Chuan? What do you want to do? Patriarch Huang Kun said, this kid ruined my big plan. I'm here to take revenge on him. And you are his fiancé, and you like him so much. If I have sex with you, he will definitely be in pain and collapse. Only in this way can I feel better. Han Kingsi was immediately scared and said, Kingsi doesn't want to have a relationship with you. Kingsi will always belong to brother Lu Chuan alone. After that, she turned around and ran out of the alley. Huang Quan Patriarch sneered, cast a spell, and immediately fixed Han Kingsi in place. Falling into my hands, do you think you can still escape? If you cooperate with me now, I can be gentle with you, otherwise I can only treat you roughly, a tender girl. He came to Han Kingsi and reached out to touch Han Kingsi's face. TSK, what a good skin bag. Even though I have seen countless women, I still can't control myself when facing such a beautiful girl. Han Kingsi was full of fear and shouted, you bad guy, get out of here, don't touch me with your dirty hands. Huang Quan Patriarch sneered and said, the more you resist now, the more exciting it will be when I take you down later. Seeing that his hand was about to touch Han Kingsi's face. At this moment, 4 people wearing black robes and hoods suddenly appeared. The 4 men threw out a rope made of special materials, which were wrapped around the limbs of Huang Quan Patriarch respectively. With a fierce tug, they pulled him away from Han Kingsi. Huang Quan Patriarch frowned and tried to break free immediately. But the next second, a strange force came from the 4 ropes, which directly suppressed the power in his body, leaving him no possibility of resistance. Huang Quan Patriarch realized the seriousness of the matter and became a little flustered. The leader of the 4 black-robed men took 2 steps forward, stared at Huang Quan Patriarch, and said in a cold voice, Lu Chuan, it's okay for you to kill ordinary people, but I didn't expect you to want to harm innocent girls. It seems that it is a wise choice for me to apply for help from the organization and sneak into China to catch you. I will take you back to the law enforcer headquarters and put you on trial now. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.